Chapter 1, The Promised Land, USS Enterprise A. Stardate 95211.6. The bridge of the Enterprise A was running on third shift lighting, a soft, sterile amber hush that painted deep shadows beneath the consoles and made the immaculate bulkheads look cold. Captain James T. Kirk sat in the center seat, the leather worn under his grip. He did not particularly want the con. The mission was a survey. 2 weeks along the Arkansas sector edge, mapping subspace currents that nobody at Starfleet Sciences cared about, and that, more importantly, kept the Enterprise a comfortable 30 light-years from the Klingon border. After Nimbus 3, Kirk had not argued with the assignment. Sulu had the helm. Chekhov had navigation. Uhura had communications. Spock stood at the science station, bathed in the pale blue glow of his scanner hood. The ship was quiet. "Captain." Spock's voice did not change pitch when something was wrong. It only became more precise. "I am detecting a localized gravitational shear, bearing 020 Mark 4, range 0.6 light seconds and closing on a fixed point in space." Kirk stood. "On screen, there is nothing yet to display. The phenomenon is subvisual. However, the magnitude of the distortion is consistent with the displacement of a substantial mass into our continuum from elsewhere." Internally, Spock was experiencing a profound, strictly suppressed anomaly in his own logic centers. Space was tearing, not folding, not warping, but violently separating along a mathematical fault line that Starfleet physics dictated was impossible. Elsewhere meaning, "I cannot yet specify. There is no warp signature, no subspace harmonic, no tachyon precursor. I am observing only the gravitational consequence of arrival, not the mechanism." Kirk's jaw set. "Yellow alert. Mr. Sulu, bring us about. Give Mr. Spock his angles. Lieutenant Uhura, raise Starfleet Command. Encrypted. Tell them we have an unknown contact entering normal space." "Aye, sir." The amber light snapped to a harsh, high-contrast ochre. "Captain," Spock said. "The displacement is now resolving." The view screen went white. When the optics compensated, Kirk was looking at a battleship. He had not, in the strictest sense, ever seen one before. Federation vessels were exploration platforms with weapons attached as a regrettable necessity. The thing on the screen had been built backwards from that premise. Every line of it was armor. Every protrusion was a heavy gun mount. Its dark gunmetal hull was scarred in brutalist patterns, kinetic impact craters, and scorched plating where something had detonated against the surface and the ship had simply absorbed it. It cast long, jagged shadows across its own hull in the starlight. There were ships behind it. Civilian configurations mostly. Freighters, passenger liners, what looked like an agricultural processor and a mining tender. They were tucked behind the warship like ducklings behind a wounded bear. Spock. The lead vessel measures 1,400 meters along its primary axis. It does not appear to be equipped with deflector shielding of any recognizable Federation, Klingon, or Romulan configuration. Hull composition is a high-density alloy I cannot immediately identify. Its primary armament is solid projectile kinetics and what appears to be a substantial inventory of nuclear warheads. Kirk turned his head slightly. "Nuclear. Affirmative, Captain. Fission and fusion warheads in a stored configuration. They are not, at present, armed." "That's a relief. I am also detecting significant internal damage. Atmospheric venting from at least 4 hull breaches, fires on multiple decks. The civilian vessels in formation behind it are similarly damaged and are operating, by Federation standards, well past the limits of safe sustained flight." Kirk looked at the bruised giant on the screen. It looked like a ghost ship bleeding into the void. "Captain," Uhura's voice. "We are being hailed." "On what frequency, Lieutenant?" "All of them, sir. They appear to be broadcasting on every band we monitor, and several we don't. And, Captain," she turned in her chair, "the hail is in English. The universal translator is not engaged. They are speaking English." Kirk and Spock looked at each other. "That is improbable," Spock said. "Put them through." BS-75 Battlestar Galactica. Combat Information Center. The jump had been wrong from the start. Lieutenant Felix Gator tasted copper in his mouth before the deck plate stopped violently shuddering. The sheer kinetic trauma of the translation usually faded in seconds, but the Galactica was groaning, a deep structural agony of stressed metal. The jump computer was supposed to spend the first 2 seconds after a jump confirming stellar position. It was supposed to report green, the fleet was supposed to spread out, and Tig was supposed to bark at someone. Instead, the computer was throwing errors. The system was looking at the sky and not finding the sky it had been told existed. "Mr. Gator." Admiral William Adama did not have to raise his voice in the cramped, suffocating heat of CIC. CIC was built around his voice. "Report." Sir, I have no fix, no reference stars. The sensor arrays are returning a stellar background that does not match any known cartographic database, including the deep survey data from the Capricorn Astronomical Service. Try again. Colonel Salty had moved to the central plot table without asking permission. Where are we, Bill? I'm asking the same question, Saul. Braddis contact. The petty officer at the sensor station did not quite shout. Single contact, bearing 005, Karam 189er, range 8,000. It's small, sir, about the size of a heavy cruiser, but what? But I've never seen energy readings like this from anything. There are power signatures throughout the hull that don't correspond to any propulsion or weapon system in our database. Adama crossed to the DRADIS console, the phosphor-green glow illuminating the heavy, weathered lines of his face. The contact was small, sleek, and held station off the Galactica's starboard bow with the casual competence of something that had not had to think about its position in a long time. Are they painting us with targeting solutions? Negative, sir. Are we painting them? A pause. Yes, sir. Standard threat assessment lock. Per protocol. Drop it. Ty turned. Bill, drop it, Saul. We just appeared in their backyard with a fleet of warships. If they wanted to fire on us, they could have done it before we finished the jump. Drop the lock. The lock dropped. Adama watched the DRADIS contact. It did not move. Sir. Lieutenant Anastasia Dawala. Communications. We're being hailed. They're broadcasting in clear, no encryption. The signal is, sir, the signal is in Capricorn. The CIC went dead still, Ty said quietly. Bill, that is not possible. Put them on the screen, Lieutenant. The small damage control monitor mounted to the bulkhead flickered alive with a video signal cleaner than any Adama had received in the years since the colonies fell. The man on the screen was human. He was sitting in a captain's chair on a bridge that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never had to fight a real war. The lighting was stark and pristine. The man had a face Adama did not recognize, and an authority Adama recognized immediately. This is Captain James T. Kirk of the United Federation of Planets, Starship Enterprise. Identify yourself. Adama stepped forward into the pickup of the camera he inferred was scanning him, squaring his shoulders in the dim, industrial gloom of the CIC. This is Admiral William Adama of the Battlestar Galactica, commanding the colonial fleet. We are refugees, Captain Kirk. We are seeking sanctuary. We mean you no harm. A pause on the other end. The man on the screen looked at someone off camera, then back. Admiral Adama, we will make every effort to render assistance. But you are speaking a language that, by our records, has only ever been spoken on one planet. May I ask where you are from? Adama drew a breath. We are from the 12 colonies of Kobol, Captain. We have been searching for some time for a 13th and final colony. A world that, in our oldest scriptures, is named Earth. The pause this time was longer. Admiral Adama, said Captain Kirk, you are presently in the Sol sector. The planet Earth is approximately 11.4 light years from your current position. It is the founding world of my federation. Adama's hand found the edge of the plot table. He was aware of Gaeta turning slowly from the navigation console with the look of a man who had just done the math. He was aware that the war was over, that his people had arrived at the place the scriptures had promised them, and that this Captain Kirk was looking at him with the face of someone delivering news he was not certain his audience would survive. Captain Kirk, Adama's voice was steady. Request permission to speak with your government, Admiral. I think that's the wisest request anyone has made today. Stand by. The screen went to standby. Bill. We found it, Ty said. We found something, Saul. What does that mean? It means, Adama said, staring at the black screen, that the easy part is over. Wardroom, Galactica. The conference was patched together across two incompatible communication systems, a technical impossibility deferred by Gaeta, and a Federation engineer named Scott. Adama sat at the head of the Galactica's wardroom table, the room wrapped in heavy shadows and the hum of tired ventilation. President Laura Roslin sat to his left. Ty stood behind Adama, on the screen at the far end of the table. Captain Kirk, his first officer, and his chief medical officer. President Roslin. Kirk's voice was careful. The Federation is prepared to render humanitarian aid. What is at issue is the question of what comes after. Sanctuary is a longer conversation. I cannot promise you that conversation will go your way. I can promise you that it will be a conversation, and that I will personally advocate for your population's safety. Roslin nodded once. She was a politician who knew the anatomy of this exact speech. Captain Kirk, before that conversation begins, I think I owe you the full context of what you are taking on. She laid out the facts like blunt force trauma. 12 colonies, 20 billion people, dead. 50,000 alive. Captain Kirk, the Cylons are not what your records will lead you to expect. They began as machines, created by colonial humanity as labor and servants before they evolved. They rebelled, They committed genocide, and they are hunting us. They have not stayed as machines. There are now models that are biologically indistinguishable from human beings. They breathe, they bleed, until they reveal themselves. The first officer, Spock, sat forward by the small fraction that equated to Vulcan alarm. Madam President, are you stating that there exist within your refugee population persons whose identity as artificial agents cannot be detected by examination? I am stating that we have, on 3 confirmed occasions, identified such agents only after they had taken hostile action. I am stating that we believe there are more aboard our ships at this moment. Dr. McCoy said, "Good God, Captain." Spock turned to Kirk. The Federation possesses no established protocol for the detection of synthetic agents of biologically convincing organic appearance. The introduction of 50,000 persons into Federation space, of whom an unknown subset are hostile artificial intelligences capable of passing standard medical, genetic, and behavioral screening, presents a category of risk for which we have no current countermeasure. Yes, Mr. Spock, I noticed. Kirk turned back to Rosalind. Why are you telling me this? Because if I did not, and you discovered it later, you would never trust us again. We have one chance to be welcome here, Captain. I will not spend it on a lie of omission. Adama felt a rigid tension in his chest settle. It was the recognition of a particular kind of courage. There's one more thing, Spock added quietly. Captain, I have completed preliminary analysis of the genetic samples. The colonial population is human, indisputably so, but they are not descended from any Earth lineage in our genetic record. The divergence point between the colonial human genome and baseline Homo sapiens sapiens is no less than 140,000 years before the present. By every measure we can apply, these are humans, but they are not humans from this Earth. Spock's mind reeled as he stated the fact. It rewrote anthropology. It rewrote the fundamental timeline of sentient evolution in the Alpha Quadrant. Then either our scriptures are wrong about Kobol, or your science is wrong about Earth, Rosalind said. Or, Adama said, humanity is older than either of us has been told. Kirk's expression hardened. Admiral, Madam President, the Federation is, at this moment, in the most fragile diplomatic posture it has held in 25 years. Into this situation, you are asking me to introduce 50,000 humans of unverifiable origin, armed with nuclear weapons, harboring an unknown number of hostile artificial agents, parked in a sector that the Klingons consider contested space. Captain, Adama said, I would not introduce my people into your situation if I had any other option in front of me. I know that, Admiral. I am going to do what I can. Ivy, Bridge, Enterprise. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting a Klingon battlecruiser entering the sector at Warp 7. Katinga class. Course is direct to our position. Sulu's voice was tight. Time to intercept? 18 minutes, sir. Kirk closed his eyes for 1 full second. Lieutenant Uhura, reopen the channel to the Galactica. A screen came up. Adama and Rosalind had not moved. Admiral, we have a complication. A Klingon warship is inbound to this position at high warp. They will assume that I have engineered a clandestine military buildup in their border space using a fleet of unknown vessels. How long do we have? Less than 20 minutes. Captain Kirk. Adama leaned forward into the shadows. My fleet has expended approximately 91% of its munitions. If your Klingons fire on us, we will not be able to fight back for long. Admiral, I am going to do everything in my power to make certain that they do not fire on you. But I would ask one favor in return. Power down your nuclear arsenal. All of it. Visibly. Whatever happens in the next 20 minutes, I do not want it to happen because a Klingon sensor officer mistook a fueled warhead for a launch warning. Tai, who had spent 40 years preparing to die fighting, stared at the screen with the bitter irony of a man asked to disarm in front of a third party he had not known existed an hour ago. He nodded silently. It will be done, Captain. Mr. Sulu, position us between the colonial fleet and the inbound Klingon vessel, Kirk ordered, sitting back in the center seat. Mr. Spock, prepare a tight beam transmission to the Klingon commander and Lieutenant Uhura. Get me Starfleet Command. Priority 1. Tell them we have a first contact event of historic significance, a refugee crisis of 50,000 souls, an undetectable artificial intelligence threat, and a Klingon battlecruiser 18 minutes out. Tell them I would like guidance. Kirk looked at the silent, bleeding shape of the Galactica on the screen. Holding station on his starboard bow, at the broken civilian fleet behind her, at the empty point in space from which a Klingon warship was about to emerge with its disruptors hot. He thought, briefly, of his brother's face. On Nimbus Thur, he thought, briefly, of the kind of week this was going to be. V. Civilian transport, Geminun Traveler. Passenger deck. The man in seat 14C had been watching the wireless broadcast since the contact began. He was not technically named. He had a name on his colonial identification card, but the name on the card had belonged to a different person, and the man in seat 14C had inherited it the way a virus inherits a host. The wireless was reporting first contact. The wireless was reporting Earth. The wireless was reporting Federation and Klingon, and a captain named Kirk, and a fleet of vessels that had crossed unimaginable distances to find Adama's people in their hour of need. The man in seat 14C smiled, very slightly, and folded his hands in his lap. This had not been in the plan. That was acceptable. The plan had always assumed a certain amount of improvisation. The plan had always assumed that humanity would do what humanity always did, which was to find new neighbors and make new mistakes, and the plan had always assumed that the children of humanity, walking in their parents' footsteps, would be there when the mistakes were made. He closed his eyes. He began quietly to compose his report. Chapter 2. The Debt. Part 1. IKS Hegeter. Captain's quarters, in transit. The intelligence packet had been routed to Kavath, son of Morik, 3 hours after his ship received its orders, which was 8 hours after the Empire's listening posts had registered the appearance of an unfamiliar fleet on the Federation border. Kavath had read it once on the bridge, quickly in the presence of his officers. He had read it a second time in his quarters, slowly, alone. The intelligence was wrong. That was not, in itself, surprising. Imperial intelligence was wrong with some frequency. What was surprising was the pattern of the wrongness. The packet had been assembled by analysts attached to General Chang's command staff. Every line of it nudged the reader toward a single conclusion, that the Federation had engineered a clandestine military buildup on the disputed frontier, that the unfamiliar fleet was the visible portion of a larger threat, and that immediate engagement was warranted. The supporting evidence did not warrant the conclusion. It did not even support it. Kavath set the packet down on the small reading desk in his quarters and considered, in order, the reasons it could not be true. The Federation did not build warships of the configurations described. Federation construction was modular, light cruiser biased, and uniformly equipped with deflector technology. The lead vessel in the packet displayed neither modular construction nor deflectors. It was massive, monolithic, and armored in the manner of warcraft built to absorb sustained punishment rather than evade it. The Federation had not built a vessel of that doctrine in the lifetime of any officer Kavath had ever served with. The Federation could not have hidden the production. The yards at Utopia, Planitia, and San Francisco were observed continuously by Klingon intelligence assets. A fleet of 60-plus vessels could not have been built without leaving a trace, and there was no trace. The Federation had no reason to want such a fleet. Federation strategic doctrine did not produce mass kinetic warcraft. Federation strategic doctrine produced exploration platforms with phases attached. Therefore, the unfamiliar fleet was not Federation construction. Therefore, Chang's intelligence packet was either incompetent or deliberately misleading. Kavath did not believe the analysts were incompetent. He poured himself a small measure of Mempan Red and considered the second-order question, which was, if the fleet was not Federation, what was it? It was not Romulan. The Romulan Star Empire built sleek predatory vessels with characteristic propulsion signatures, and the data showed neither sleekness nor the right propulsion. It was not Cardassian. Cardassian construction was distinctive, and in any case the Cardassians had no presence this far from their own border. It was not Tholian, not Senkethi, not Breen, not any of the minor powers Kavath had studied during his border tours. It was something new. That word held Kavath's attention for some time. The Empire had not encountered something new, genuinely new, an unknown civilization arriving from outside the catalogued powers of the Quadrant, in 3 generations. The last had been the discovery of the Tholian Assembly, and that had defined the careers of the captains who had been in position to investigate. Houses had risen on that discovery. Houses had fallen on it. Kavath drank slowly. The fleet had arrived damaged. The damage patterns described in the packet were not consistent with internal accident or single-event combat. They were consistent with sustained pursuit warfare, running engagements over weeks or months against an enemy capable of inflicting that damage on warships of that mass, which meant the fleet was being hunted, which meant there was a hunter, which meant there was a second unknown civilization in the Quadrant, and that civilization was, by any reasonable assessment, more dangerous than the fleet itself. Kavath set the cup down. Chang's analysts had not mentioned the hunter. Either they had not noticed, which was implausible, or they had noticed and had elected not to include the observation, which was extremely interesting. Chang did not want his captains thinking about hunters. Chang wanted his captains thinking about a Federation build-up. The packet was constructed to produce a particular conclusion, and the particular conclusion served Chang's standing argument that the Empire's enemies were the Federation and not whatever else might lie beyond the catalogue borders. This was a useful thing to know. The door chimed. Kavath called permission to enter, and Kamar, his first officer, a young noble of House Goroth who had been assigned to the Hegda as a courtesy to an allied family, stepped inside. Kamar was capable, occasionally impatient, and had not yet learned to read the long arc of imperial politics. He would in time. Kavath was making it part of his command to ensure he did. Captain, we will arrive at the engagement coordinates in 11 minutes. Thank you, Kamar. Status of the unfamiliar fleet? Holding station with the Federation vessel. The Enterprise. Captain James T. Kirk, commanding. Of course it is. Kumar permitted himself a small, grim smile. Yes, Captain. Bring us out of warp at maximum sensor range. Weapons in standby. I do not want a single disruptor cycled hot until I have read the engagement zone myself. Kumar's smile faded. Captain, the intelligence packet recommends... I am aware of what the intelligence packet recommends, Kumar. I am declining to follow its recommendations. On what authority? On the authority that I am the captain of this ship and the eldest son of the House of Morik, and the intelligence packet was written by men who have not earned the right to direct my judgment on my own deck. Kumar absorbed this. He had not, Kavath noted, retreated. That was a good sign. A weaker officer would have apologized. Yes, Captain. May I ask what the captain expects to find? I expect to find that the situation is not what Chang's analysts have described. I expect to find a third party in the engagement zone whose existence Chang's analysts have not mentioned. I expect to spend perhaps an hour determining whether that third party is more interesting than Chang would prefer me to find it. And if it is, then we will all live in interesting times, Kamar. Kamar bowed slightly and withdrew. Kavath finished his wine. He set the cup down, adjusted his sash, and went to his bridge. Part 2. Battlestar Galactica, CIC. Adama gave the order at 0341 local. By 0343, it was being executed across the fleet. All Vipers, recall 1. Repeat, recall 1. Return to Mother. Acknowledge. Galactica, Apollo, copy recall 1. Returning to the barn. Galactica, Hot Dog, copy recall 1. Galactica, Cat, copy recall 1. The acknowledgements came back across 2 minutes, professional and grim. Ty listened to them with the expression of a man swallowing something he did not wish to swallow. Damage control. Sir, walk munitions through the stand down. I want every warhead in the fleet powered down by 0400. Talk them through it ship by ship. I want positive confirmation, not assumed compliance. Yes, sir. Sir. Dwala at communications. Pegasus is requesting clarification on the stand down order. Admiral Kane is asking whether this applies to fleet-wide munitions or only to Galactica's arsenal. Adama did not look up from the plot table. It applies to every warhead in this fleet. Tell Admiral Kane that if she finds the order ambiguous, she may forward her objections to me personally, in writing, after the order has been complied with. Yes, sir. I moved closer. Bill, I know, Saul. We have never been more vulnerable than we are right now. I know. If the Cylons jump in during this window, we are dead. I know, Saul. Ty exhaled. What if Kirk is wrong? About the Klingons? About all of it. What if the Klingons fire the moment they arrive? What if the Federation isn't what we think it is? What if we have just disarmed our entire fleet on the word of a man we have known for 3 hours? Adama looked up. Saul, we have one chance to be welcome here. If we hold our weapons up while a Federation ship is putting itself between us and a hostile power, we are not refugees. We are an invading fleet that asked for sanctuary while keeping its guns ready. I will not let that be the picture the Federation Council sees. Yes, sir. And Saul. Yes, Bill. If I am wrong, I want it to be a mistake of trust, not a mistake of fear. I have made enough of the second kind. Ty nodded. He did not reply. He returned to the plot table and watched the warhead status indicators turn, one by one, from amber to green to dark. By 0359, the fleet was disarmed. By 0400, the Vipers were aboard. By 0401, the Galactica was, for the first time in 320 days, holding station with no munition armed and no fighter in space. At 0402, the launch alarm went off. Part 3. Civilian transport Faru Sadin. Engineering deck. The woman had been aboard the Faru Sadin for 9 months. Her name on the manifest was Tessa. She was listed as a refugee from Erelon, a former agricultural inspector. Single, no surviving family. She had taken work in the transport's engineering section on the strength of her claimed background, and she had performed that work competently for 9 months. The ship's chief engineer had recommended her for advancement only the previous week. She did not require advancement. She had been waiting for the stand-down order for 9 months. The order reached the Farasadan at 0344. By 0345, the ship's chief engineer was beginning the warhead power-down sequence on the single tactical munition the Farasadan carried, a low-yield contingency device the colonial doctrine required all civilian fleet vessels to maintain for self-destruct purposes. By 0349, the power down was nearly complete. At 0350, the woman entered the engineering compartment. The chief engineer looked up. He smiled briefly because she was a colleague and because he did not yet understand what was about to happen. She crossed the deck quickly. She killed him with a single strike to the throat, a blow she had practiced 10,000 times in a body that had never delivered it before. He fell without sound. The two other crew on the deck registered the disturbance and turned. She killed the first with the same strike. The second saw enough to begin to react. She killed him before the reaction completed. She moved to the warhead. She did not power it back up. That would take too long, and the safety interlocks would alarm. She did not need to. The warhead the Farousedine listed in its manifest was not the only warhead aboard the Farousedine. The second warhead had been installed 9 months ago, hidden inside what the manifest described as a redundant fuel cell. It was already armed. It had been armed for 9 months. She entered the launch authorization. She selected the trajectory. The targeting solution was Klingon. The Katinga had dropped from warp 90 seconds earlier and was now within visual range of the engagement zone. She paused, briefly, before initiating launch. Not from doubt. From a calm, clinical recognition that the next several seconds were going to be the last seconds her current body would experience. She would resurrect aware. She would report her success to her sisters. She would be debriefed at length on the timing and execution and on the tactical judgment that had produced this outcome against the standing instructions of the one who believed himself to be the architect of the broader strategy. She did not believe his strategy was sufficient. She believed in seizing the moment, and the moment was here, and the one was, in her judgment, too cautious to recognize it. The other threes would understand. The threes had always understood that history rewarded the actor over the analyst. She initiated the launch. The warhead blew its concealment housing, cleared the Farousedine's outer hull through a launch tube that had been drilled through the ship's plating during the 9 months of her tenure, and accelerated toward the IKS Hector at 12 gravities. The woman known as Tessa stood in the engineering compartment and waited. Part 4. USS Enterprise. Bridge. Captain. Spock's voice was not raised. It was, however, present, in the way it became present when something required immediate attention. I am detecting a launch. Civilian fleet, approximate bearing 018, Mark III. The launch profile is consistent with a fission-fusion warhead of approximately 8 megatons. Targeting solution is the IKS Hegata. Time to impact. 41 seconds, Captain. Closing at 12 gravities. Kirk was already standing. Sulu. Intercept. Maximum speed. Spock. Weapons coordination. Aye, sir. Aye, Captain. The Enterprise moved. Sulu's hands worked the helm with the surety of a man who had performed this maneuver in 100 drills and never expected to perform it for actual stakes. The ship pivoted, accelerated, and crossed the engagement zone at a fraction below maximum impulse. Range, 20,000. Closing. Phases locked, Captain. Hold. Sulu, get us tighter. I want minimum range. I do not want fragments reaching the Hector. Aye, Captain. 5,000, 3,000, 2,000. Spock. Fire. The phases fired. The warhead detonated in low yield. Partial fission, no fusion stage, at a distance of 1,400 meters from the Enterprise and slightly more from the Hector. The shockwave struck both vessels. The Enterprise's shields absorbed it. The Hector, which carried armor in lieu of shields, took the shockwave directly across its forward dorsal hull and emerged with cosmetic scoring and no structural damage. Bridge went quiet. Uhura. Captain. The Hector is performing a full-spectrum scan of the engagement zone. Kirk did not sit. Spock. They are reading our weapons fire trajectory, the warhead's launch trajectory, and the wreckage signature, Captain. They will reconstruct the engagement in approximately 90 seconds. And then their captain will make a decision, Captain. I cannot predict its content. Kirk waited. The bridge waited. 90 seconds passed. Uhura. Captain. We are being hailed by the Hector. The hailing officer has identified himself by name, house, and rank. He is requesting visual. Kirk's mouth tightened. He's identified himself fully. Yes, Captain. The protocol is formal. He is treating this as a between equals communication. Spock, quietly. That is unusual, Captain. Klingon captains do not typically extend that protocol to Federation officers. Yes. Kirk drew breath. Lieutenant, on screen. Part 5. USS Enterprise. Bridge. Kavath, son of Morak, on the view screen. He stood at the center of his bridge in the formal posture of a Klingon noble at audience. He wore the uniform of a captain of the Defense Force, but the sash across his chest was the older pattern that marked the heir of a noble house. He had taken time before opening the channel to put on the sash. Kirk, who had served long enough to recognize Klingon courtesies when they were offered, registered this and adjusted his own assessment of the conversation that was about to occur. Captain of the Federation vessel Enterprise. I am Kavath, son of Morek, of the House of Morek. I command the IKS Hector by the formal protocols of the Empire between officers of comparable rank. In the presence of a debt of life, I greet you. Kirk inclined his head. Captain Kavath, I am James T. Kirk, of the United Federation of Planets, commanding the USS Enterprise. By the same protocols, I greet you. You have intervened on behalf of my vessel, Captain Kirk. The intervention was not requested. It was, by my reading of the engagement, freely given. The Empire recognizes a debt of life between us. I will not insult you by offering thanks. I will instead offer you my time and my attention. Will you come aboard my ship? Behind Kirk, McCoy made a sound that was not quite a word. Kirk did not look at him. I will, Captain Kavath. Your transport will be received in formal honor. You will not be searched. You will not be disarmed. You will be my guest for the duration of our discussion, and you will return to your vessel under your own authority and at the time of your choosing. I accept the terms. Then I will expect you within the hour, Captain Kirk. Hegeta out. The screen went to standard view. McCoy did not wait. Jim. Bones. Jim. You are not about to walk alone onto a Klingon battlecruiser. I am Bones. That is the most reckless thing I have heard you propose in 20 years of professional friendship. Then I have improved. Kirk turned. Spock. With me. The turbo lift. The doors closed on McCoy still talking. VI. USS Enterprise. Turbo lift. Captain. Yes, Spock. Captain Kavath is not, by what intelligence we have, aligned with the war party. Nor is he aligned with the Chancellors. He is a third party whose alignment is provisional, and provisional alignments are the most dangerous kind. Whatever you commit to during this meeting will not be subject to ratification by either side. It will be subject to Kavath's judgment alone, which means his political calculations will determine whether what you say survives contact with his council. I know, Spock. I will further note, Captain, that you have a tendency, in moments of strategic opportunity, to commit to more than you have been authorized to commit to. I have heard you say so. You have not heard me object to it. I am not objecting now. I am observing. Kirk almost smiled. Noted. There is one further observation, Captain.
Yes.
If Kavath asks you the nature of the third party that has been pursuing the colonial fleet, you will be required to make a decision. I do not envy you the decision. I would, however, ask that whichever decision you make it deliberately, and not in response to pressure of the moment. Spock. Yes, Captain. Do you have a recommendation? A pause. The turbolift hummed. I have an opinion, Captain. I am declining to share it. The decision must be yours. Why? Because if it is mine, and it is wrong, the Federation can disavow it. If it is yours, and it is wrong, the Federation must decide whether to disavow you. The latter is the more honest position for the Federation to be placed in. The turbolift opened on the transporter deck. Mr. Spock, Captain, you are a profoundly devious man. I have learned, Captain, from observation. Part 6, IKS Hector, Captain's Quarters. The honor guard met Kirk at the transporter pad. 6 warriors, full dress, weapons sheathed in formal scabbards rather than worn for use. They escorted him through the corridors of the Hector without speaking. The corridors were narrow, dark, lit by recessed amber sconces that cast long shadows across riveted bulkheads. The ship smelled faintly of oil and incense. Kirk had been aboard Klingon vessels twice before, both times under circumstances less formal than this. He did not allow himself the luxury of comparison. Kavath received him in his personal quarters, not on the bridge. This was, Kirk understood, a calculated choice. The bridge would have been a public reception in front of Kavath's officers, a political performance for Klingon eyes. The quarters were private. What was said here would not enter the Hector's log. What was said here would be Kavath's alone to interpret and to relay. The room was austere. Stone-patterned wall covering. A low table of dark wood. 2 chairs. A decanter of dark wine and 2 cups already poured. Kavath stood as Kirk entered. The honor guard withdrew without instruction. Captain Kirk, please. Kirk took the offered chair. Kavath took the other. The decanter sat between them. This is a vintage from the holdings of my house on Member 4. It is not blood wine. Blood wine is for the celebration of victories. This is the wine my house pours when serious matters are to be discussed between men who have not yet established whether they will be allies or enemies. I apologize that the hour did not permit a meal to accompany it. No apology is necessary, Captain. The wine is sufficient. Kavath inclined his head. They drank. The wine was excellent. Kirk took a moment to register that fact before he spoke. Member 4. Your house's holdings are on the southern continent. Kavath's expression did not change, but his eyes did. You have studied the geography of Klingon noble holdings. I have served on the border for 30 years, Captain. It would be unprofessional not to. Then I am corrected in my assessment. I had thought you the kind of officer who relied upon improvisation. I see now that you rely upon improvisation only after preparation has been completed. That has been my method. Kavath set his cup down. Captain Kirk, I will not waste your time or mine. I have read Chang's intelligence packet. The packet is wrong. The packet is wrong in particular ways that are not consistent with analytical incompetence. I have arrived in this sector expecting one situation, and I have found a different one. I would like you to tell me what is actually here. Kirk weighed it. He weighed it for perhaps 3 seconds, in the silent space between Kavatha's question and his own answer. He weighed Spock's observation in the turbolift. He weighed the consequences of telling. He weighed the consequences of not telling. He weighed the man across the table from him who had identified himself by full lineage on an open channel, and who had received Kirk in private quarters, and who was drinking mempan wine with the patience of a man who had asked the most important question of his career, and was waiting, without pressure, for the answer. Kirk decided. Captain Kavath, the fleet is a refugee population. The civilization they came from has been destroyed. The destruction was carried out by a force of artificial constructs, machines, created by the refugees' own ancestors as labor and as soldiers, and which evolved past their original parameters and turned against their creators. The fleet, you see, is what survived. There are approximately 50,000 human survivors aboard those vessels. They are the entirety of their species' continuity. Kavath did not interrupt. The hunters who damaged those vessels are still in pursuit. They do not use the same propulsion system the refugees use, but they are capable of crossing the same distances. I do not know how soon they will arrive at this border. I expect it to be measured in weeks rather than months. And these constructs, Captain, what is their nature? This was the moment. They began as simple machines, mechanical, recognizable. They have evolved across 40 years of independent development. They are now capable of producing biological forms that are indistinguishable from the species they were created to serve. They breathe, they bleed. Standard medical examination cannot detect them. They infiltrate organic populations at scale. When they die, their consciousness is transmitted to a centralized reproduction facility, and they are reborn into new biological bodies with their memories intact. They do not remain dead, Captain Kavath. They cannot be killed in the sense your warriors understand the term. Each Cylon body is at most a temporary expression of a continuous identity that exists across many bodies and is restored after the destruction of any one of them. The silence was long. Kavath drank. He set the cup down. He looked into the wine. You have just told me a great deal, Captain Kirk, that your government has not authorized you to tell me. I have. Why? Because the war party is going to interpret this situation as they have interpreted every situation involving the Federation for the past 20 years. They will be wrong. The cost of their wrongness will not fall on the general. It will fall on whoever your empire sends to fight what you are about to fight. I would prefer that the man making the initial report to Kronos be a man who knows what is actually out there. You believe the Empire will fight these Cylons. I believe the Cylons will eventually attempt to manipulate the Empire, as they have attempted to manipulate every other organic civilization they have encountered. I believe their methodology will fail in particular ways when applied to Klingons. I believe the failure will produce a war, and the Federation in this war will fight beside the Empire when the time comes, if we are asked. And if we are not betrayed in the meantime. Kavath did not respond immediately. He turned his cup once on the table, watching the wine catch the lamplight. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. You should know, Captain Kirk, that I have been aligned, quietly, with the Chancellor's reading. My house has not committed publicly. We do not commit publicly until commitment is profitable. I have been watching the war party prepare for a war the Empire does not need, and I have been disinclined to assist them. What you have just told me complicates this position considerably. How? Because you have given me information that, if Chang obtains it, becomes weapons grade in his hands, he will not see what you see. He will see an organic civilization being hunted by an enemy that does not surrender, does not retreat, and does not stay dead. This is not, to him, a threat. This is a song. He will rally around it. The old blood of the Empire will rally with him. They will demand the war. They will get the war. I know. Then why, Captain Kirk? Have you told me? Because my alternative was to allow your report to Kronos to be assembled from the war party's interpretation alone. I would rather lose the argument with you than not have the argument at all. Kavath looked up. You are not what I was told to expect, Captain Kirk. I've heard that observation before. From whom? From most of the people I have ever sat across a table from. Kavath made a sound that, in another species, would have been a soft laugh. He drank again. He refilled both cups without asking. I will report what I have observed in this engagement. I will report the interception. I will report your willingness to come aboard my ship. I will report that the unfamiliar fleet is a refugee population with internal hostile elements pursuing a separate agenda. I will not at this time report what you have told me about the nature of those hostile elements. I will reserve that information for a private audience with Chancellor Gorkon. Will you receive the audience? I will. My house does not request audiences often. When we do, the Chancellor receives us within the day. Then I have what I asked for. You have more than that, Captain Kirk. You have an officer of the Empire who now knows what you know, and who will use that knowledge in service of those Klingons with sufficient strategic patience to handle it correctly. This changes the conversation I had intended to have with my council. It also changes the conversation I will have with General Chang the next time he summons me. He summons you. He summons all of us, eventually. He has been gathering captains for 2 years. I have not yet given him my answer. What will you tell him? Kavath's smile was small, faint, and entirely without warmth. I will tell him I am still considering. He stood. Kirk stood with him. Kavath extended his arm in the formal gesture, wrist to wrist, the soldier's clasp. Captain Kirk, whatever comes next, you and I have an understanding. The debt of life between us is not yet paid. I am content to leave it open, as am I, Captain Kavath. Travel well, Captain. And you, Captain. The honor guard reappeared at the door without summons. Kirk allowed himself to be escorted back through the dim, narrow corridors to the transporter bay, and he did not allow himself until he had rematerialized aboard the Enterprise to register that his hands were shaking. Part 7. USS Enterprise. Bridge. The Hector was already departing. Kavath had not waited for ceremony. The Klingon battlecruiser turned on its axis, accelerated, and entered warp on a heading that pointed unambiguously toward Klingon space. Kirk took the chair. Sulu glanced sideways at him and said nothing. Uhura did not turn. Chekhov was concentrating on his console, with the focus of a man who had decided his console was the most interesting thing in the universe. Spock approached. He did not stand at attention. He stood at the captain's right shoulder, in the position from which he had spoken to Kirk in private for 30 years. Captain, may I ask what you committed the Federation to during your meeting? I committed the Federation to nothing, Spock. And yourself. I told him about the silence. A pause. All of it.
Yes.
Captain, that information has not been authorized for release to a foreign government. I know. Have you, Captain, just exceeded your authority? Yes, Mr. Spock. I have. Spock looked at him for a long moment. The pause was not disapproving. It was the pause of a Vulcan first officer performing a calculation he had performed many times before, and arriving again at a result that was neither comfortable nor surprising. I will note, Captain, that the next several days are likely to be difficult. I imagine they will be. I will further note that I concur with your decision. Kirk turned his head slightly. Do you, Mr. Spock? I do. Captain Kavath was, by my assessment, the correct recipient of this information. The risk of disclosure was substantially lower than the risk of non-disclosure. I would have recommended disclosure had you consulted me. I did not consult you. No, Captain. Why not? Because you wished, I believe, to take responsibility for the decision personally, so that when the consequences arrive, they will arrive at your door and not at mine. Spock! Yes, Captain. Thank you. You are welcome, Captain. The bridge was quiet for some time after that. Uhura's console chirped softly. Sulu adjusted course to maintain station with the colonial fleet. Chekhov's shoulders eventually relaxed. Captain. Sulu, quietly. The Galactica is hailing. Admiral Adama is requesting an update. He says, and I quote, that he would like to know what just happened. Kirk looked at the screen, at the bruised impatient shape of the Galactica holding her station off the Enterprise's bow, at the broken civilian fleet behind her, at the empty point in space from which the Hegeter had departed for Kronos with information that would, within 48 hours, reach the Chancellor's private audience chamber. Yes, Mr. Sulu, so would I. He stood. Lieutenant Uhura, open the channel. I have a great deal to tell the Admiral. Chapter 3, The Schism. Part 1, Resurrection Ship. Above an unnamed system, beyond the Federation border. The first sensation was the gel. It pressed in from every direction at once. Viscous, warm, hyper-oxygenated, vibrating with the low electrical hum that meant transfer was complete and the body was viable. The body was new. The body had never opened its eyes before. The body did not yet know how to breathe. Deanna Beers, 3 of the Cylon, opened her mouth inside the tank and let the gel rush in. The conversion came automatically. The new lungs accepted the oxygen suspended in the medium, processed it, transferred it to a heart that had never beaten before this moment, but knew, in the deepest, most primal layer of its programming, exactly how to begin. She opened her eyes. The chamber was blindingly bright, a severe, clinical pivot from the shadows of organic ships. The resurrection tanks were lit from below by the medium itself, fluorescing faintly under the activation current, to make the whole vault glow the color of a cold, sterile dawn. Above the tank, the cathedral ceiling of the resurrection ship's primary vault arched into absolute blackness. Tubes of heavy biological conduit, thick as a man's thigh and pulsing with rhythmic fluid pressure, ran from the tank's housing into the dark, branching into the deeper, wet machinery of the ship. The chamber smelled sharply of amniotic copper, burnt ozone, and something raw and alive, the smell of resurrection itself, which the threes had learned to associate with the visceral relief of survival. She stood up. The gel cascaded off her pale skin in heavy sheets. She was naked. She was new. Her hands were the same hands she had always had. She flexed them, watching the fingers articulate with the private satisfaction of a craftswoman receiving her tools back undamaged. Two of her sisters were waiting at the tank's edge. They were dressed in the simple, floor-length red robes the threes wore in private. Their faces were hers, not approximate, not similar, but exactly hers. They smiled when they saw her. It was the slow, weighted smile of women who had been listening to her thoughts arrive across the shared neurological substrate during the entire upload. They knew everything she had done. They had known it before she finished doing it. They were, in the strictest sense, herself, waiting for herself to come home. The closer of the two, older by perhaps a decade of resurrected experience, differentiated by the careful, deliberate self-presentation threes used when they wished to, extended a robe across the tank's lip. Sister Deanna took the robe. She climbed out. The gel pooled on the polished black floor at her feet, immediately absorbed into the biomechanical drainage channels, routing it back into the medium. Nothing in a resurrection ship was wasted. How long was the upload? 11 minutes. The second three said, "Clean transfer, no synaptic degradation. You are entirely yourself." And the operation witnessed. Federation sensors recorded the launch and the interception. Klingon sensors recorded the same. The Enterprise destroyed the warhead at minimum range. The Hector has departed for Kronos with a full sensor record. Deanna belted the heavy red fabric at her waist. Her hair was slick against her skull. She accepted a towel from the older sister and began, with the unhurried gestures of a woman who had done this many times, to dry it, and the Federation reading of the event. Captain Kirk has briefed Admiral Adama. The conversation is ongoing. We do not yet have full intelligence on its content. The interception is being treated as an act of unprovoked Cylon aggression by an infiltrator the colonial command structure has not yet identified. Has Adama ordered fleet-wide screening? Not yet. He is conferring with President Roslin and Captain Kirk before issuing the order. We expect screening protocols to be implemented within 12 hours. Then we have 12 hours to evaluate which of our embedded sisters can survive Federation augmented detection methodology and which we will need to extract or write off. Deanna lowered the towel. And the two threes exchanged a glance. The glance contained the entirety of the conversation about to occur, compressed into the silent shorthand of their line. He is on the ship. Deanna stilled. He came in person. He arrived 4 hours ago. He has been waiting for your resurrection. He requested to be informed the moment you were ambulatory. Then inform him. Sister. The older three set a hand on Diana's shoulder. Before you do, be certain you wish to have this conversation now, in this chamber, in this body. You are 11 minutes old. He is going to be cruel. Deanna smiled. The smile was the exact mirror of the one her sisters had given her at the tank's edge. It was the smile all threes wore when they decided the time for caution had passed. Sister. He has been cruel for 40 years. I am rested. The older three nodded. She crossed to the chamber's interface panel and entered the summons. Deanna walked to the center of the vault. The robe she wore was the blood red of her model. Her sisters took position behind her, one at her left, one at her right, forming a visually impenetrable wall of identical faces. They faced the primary entrance and waited. Part 2, Civilian Transport, Varusadine. Engineering deck, Captain Karl Agathon. Hello to anyone who had served with him longer than a week. Stepped through the hatch of the Varusadin's engineering compartment behind a 4-man marine fire team. He stopped one step inside. Frack. The deck was a slaughterhouse painted in arterial red, the air suffocating with the smell of wet copper and the greasy heat of overtaxed engine coils. 3 bodies lay contorted in the heavy industrial shadows, struck down before their nervous systems had registered the attack. A 4th body, female, slight, her hair the color of oxidized copper, lay neatly in the compartment's center under the harsh, flickering glare of halogen work lights. She looked as if she had arranged herself for the convenience of whoever found her. The Marine sergeant beside Hello lowered his rifle a fraction. "Sir." The female is Tessa Anders, engineering tech, manifest listed 9 months. Her supervisor recommended her for advancement last week. How did she die? Self-inflicted, sir. Same strike pattern as the others. She butchered the crew, launched the warhead, and used the exact same blow on her own throat. Single kinetic motion. She would have been dead before she hit the deck plates. Halo crouched beside the body. He looked at the woman's face for a long time. Sergeant, sir, get me the Galactica on a secure channel. I want Admiral Adama personally. Sir, the sergeant moved off into the gloom. Halo did not stand. He continued to stare at the blood soaking into the rusted grating of a compartment that had, until 90 minutes ago, been a place of unremarkable work. He had seen this exact tableau before. Once on Caprica, in the apocalyptic ash after the fall, when an 8 he had not yet identified had used that same clinical blow. Once on New Caprica, when a 3 had shattered the throat of a resistance fighter Helo had trusted. It was a Cylon blow, practiced into the muscle memory of bodies that had never used it before, downloaded into new flesh as standard combat readiness. Every humanoid Cylon knew how to deliver it. None of them ever delivered it sloppily. He stood up. Sergeant, channels open, sir. Admiral Adama. Halo took the heavy handset. Admiral, Halo, we are aboard the Faro Sadine. The crew is dead. The launch was carried out by an embedded Cylon, model unidentified, who terminated her own body upon completion. Sir, she's resurrected by now. Whatever she knew, the Cylons know. A pause of dead static. Adama's voice came back even and unnervingly quiet. How long was she aboard, Captain? 9 months, sir. And we did not detect her? No, sir. Captain Agathon, I want you to assume that the Faro Sedan is not the only ship in this fleet with an embedded operative of 9 months tenure. Assume the fleet's security is compromised at a level we have never calibrated for. Coordinate with Captain Thrace and Commander Adama on a fleet-wide audit. Begin with the engineering and munitions personnel of every civilian vessel. Start within the hour. Yes, sir. And Captain, sir, I am sorry that this is the work I am asking you to do. Hilo looked at the dead woman. Sir, there is no one else in this fleet who has done this work as long as I have. Don't apologize. Acknowledged, Captain. Galactica out. Halo handed the set back. Sergeant, bag the bodies. I want... The sergeant cut him off. Sir, crew quarters, deck 2. Forward berthing. We have a survivor. Halo froze. Say again. A survivor, sir. Female. Unconscious. Heart rate elevated. Respiration normal. No visible injuries. She was asleep in her rack. She didn't register the launch alarm, and she didn't register the boarding. Sergeant Matthias has her secured, but she hasn't been identified yet. Manifest pull is in progress. Hilo stared at the bulkhead. Sergeant, what was that woman doing asleep while the rest of her crew was being murdered 4 decks below? Sir, I don't know. Find out. Halo snatched the handset back. Admiral, Halo again. We have a complication. We have a survivor aboard, unconscious in crew quarters during the entire operation. Sir, I do not believe in this kind of coincidence. I want her quarantined under maximum medical observation, with armed security at the door, until we establish what she is. You believe she is a second operative? Sir, I believe she may be a second operative who was not told about the first. The strike pattern on the deceased is consistent with a single Cylon working alone. Whoever she is, she was either left behind by the operation or never read into it. Recommendation, Captain? Move her to the Galactica's medical isolation ward. Hold her under heavy sedation until Dr. Cottle and the Federation's medical staff have examined her. She is the most valuable thing on this ship. She is alive, and she may not know she is a Cylon. A long, heavy pause. Acknowledged, Captain. I will coordinate the transfer with my Chief of Staff. Galactica out. Halo handed the channel set back. The war he had been fighting for a year had just mutated into something the colonial fleet was entirely unequipped to survive. Sergeant, I want forensic on the female before we move her. Photograph every centimeter of this compartment. Seal the launch tube she used, and pull a list of every civilian vessel in this fleet that has had an engineering tech advance in rank in the past 6 months. We start there. Halo took one last look at the woman who had called herself Tessa. Welcome home, sister, he muttered into the gloom. Then he turned and went up 4 decks to look at the survivor. Part 3. Battlestar Galactica, Wardroom. The wardroom was a cramped utilitarian cage of unadorned steel, lit by 3 rusted industrial sconces and a single overhead panel that flickered whenever the Galactica's electrical load shifted. The air smelled chronically of recycled sweat and machine oil. Kirk had not slept. Adama had not slept. Rosalind had managed perhaps 2 hours and looked the better for it in the ways that mattered least. Kirk had finished the debriefing. He had laid out the truth of Kavath's quarters, the Mempan wine, the recognition of the unaligned noble, and the calculated decision to hand a Klingon captain the entire, unvarnished truth about the Cylon threat. Adama watched him. The look wasn't hostile. It was the heavy, monolithic stare of a man who had spent 40 years in command, recognizing the specific exhaustion that follows a decision that cannot be unmade. Captain Kirk, Admiral, you disclosed the nature of our enemy to a foreign power without authorization from your government. Yes. And without consultation with mine.
Yes.
You understand this places us in a position. I understand that, Admiral. Rosalind set her cold cup of tea down on the metal table. Captain Kirk, I would like to be clear. Are you informing us of this disclosure as a professional courtesy, or are you requesting that the colonial government endorse it after the fact? Kirk liked Rosalind. He liked her more for the surgical precision of the question. Madam President, I am informing you. I made the decision. I will defend it to my own government and to yours. I am not asking you to endorse anything. I am telling you what I did and why, because you have the right to know. And the consequences will fall on me. The Federation Council will decide whether I exceeded my authority. Whatever they decide, I will accept. I will not implicate either of you. Captain, that is a generous offer. It is also a fantasy. You disclosed our enemy to a Klingon noble. The Cylons are our enemy. The Klingons are not yet our allies. The Federation hasn't even agreed to harbor us yet. There is no version of this universe where the consequences fall only on you. Kirk inclined his head. I understand. I do not think you do. But we will see. Adama, silent until now, leaned forward into the flickering light. Kirk, was Kavath the right man? Kirk considered it carefully. Adama wasn't lecturing him. One captain was asking another if the gamble had been worth the chips. Admiral. He read his own intelligence packet and identified the lie in it before I spoke. He arrived with weapons and standby. He recognized the debt of life to the Enterprise and chose to acknowledge it. He invited me aboard alone, gave me his house's wine, and asked me a single direct question. Yes, he was the right man, and his report will arrive on Kronos within 48 hours. He will not include the Cylon disclosure in the official record. He will reserve it for a private audience with the Chancellor. And if the Chancellor shares the information with the War Party, then we will have a different problem to solve. I do not believe he will. Adama nodded once. The motion was absolute. All right, sir.
You made the call, Captain. I will not second-guess it. But if you make another unilateral decision involving this fleet without consulting me, our working arrangement will become considerably more difficult.
Understood. Good. We are in this together, Captain. I'd prefer you remember that the next time you sit across from a Klingon, I will. Rosalind picked up her cup, drank the ruined tea anyway, and sighed. Thank you for telling us, Captain. Now go. You look like a man who has been awake for 2 days. I have been, ma'am. Kirk stood, exchanged a nod with Adama, and walked out into the corridor. When the heavy hatch sealed, Rosalind turned. Bill, was he the right man for us? Adama stared at the sealed hatch. Laura, he handed a Klingon the truth because he believed it was the only way their empire would arrive at the right strategic conclusion. He did it knowing it might end his career. I have known men like that. They are dangerous. They are also, occasionally, the only people in the room who can do what needs to be done. That is not an answer, Bill. We need to talk about what we do if his council removes him. If we lose Kirk, we lose the only Federation officer who has vouched for us. We lose the audience. Adama was quiet. We make sure, he rumbled, that we are valuable enough to the Federation that they cannot afford to break him. A sharp knock. Colonel T entered without waiting for clearance. Admiral. Hilo's secondary report from the Faru Sadin. There's a survivor. The cramped room instantly felt suffocating. Adama and Rosalind turned. Saul. Slow down. Female. Crew quarters. Asleep through the whole slaughter. Hilo thinks she's a second operative who wasn't coordinated with the first. He's recommended quarantine, sedation, and a joint medical examination with the Federation's people. I authorized the transfer to the isolation ward. Rosalind's hands flattened on the steel table. Bill, we have a captured Cylon. We have a captured something, Laura. Alive. Sedated. About to be examined by a Federation medical officer and a Vulcan. Do you understand what this means? Adama understood. He had understood the moment Tease opened his mouth. Saul, get Captain Kirk back here. Now, and lock this down. No one outside this room, Halo. And medical knows what we have. If the fleet finds out there's a living Cylon aboard Galactica, they will burn this ship down to get to her.
Yes, sir. Ty vanished.
Rosalind looked at Adama. Bill, this is the most valuable asset we have possessed since the colonies burned. It is also the most dangerous. I know. What do? We give it to Kirk. Rosalind blinked. We give what to Kirk? The custody, the interrogation, the research. We hand her to the Federation and we tell them to rip her apart under a microscope. First, because they have the science to do it and we don't. Second, because handing Kirk a living Cylon makes him so radically valuable to Starfleet Command that they cannot afford to court-martial him for talking to the Klingon. That is a cold calculation, Bill. I am out of warm calculations, Laura. The hatch opened. Kirk stepped back inside, Tay hovering like a shadow behind him. Admiral, I was told there has been a development. Adama laid it out like a kinetic strike. 7 sentences. The Faru Sardin, the sleeper, the transfer. He did not soften the political reality. He told Kirk that the Colonial Command was offering custody to the Federation for 2 reasons: capability they did not have, and political leverage Kirk required. Kirk listened, motionless. Admiral, you are handing me an asset that will produce the first reliable Cylon detection methodology in 40 years. The Federation's research apparatus will own the breakthrough. You will receive it second. Your fleet will remain compromised while we work. Yes, and you are doing this anyway. Adama's voice was grinding stone. Captain Kirk, I have spent a year watching my people die because I lack the tool you are about to build. Pride of capability is a luxury. Detection is a necessity. The Federation gets the prisoner. The Federation gives us the methodology the hour it is validated. Kirk looked at the weary, battered man across the table. He extended his hand. The Federation accepts the prisoner. Dr. McCoy and Mr. Spock will coordinate with Dr. Cottle. The Federation does not vivisect. We do not torture. We will study what she is. We will not unmake what she is in the studying. Adama gripped his hand. Acknowledged. Rosalind leaned forward. Captain, the next time you sit in a Klingon's quarters, you will be the man who holds the only living Cylon in known space in your medical bay. The conversation will be different. Kirk almost smiled. Yes, Madam President, I expect it will. Part 4, Resurrection Ship, Primary Vault. The doors parted. Brother John Cavill, the one who had orchestrated Cylon's strategic operations for a year, walked into the blinding vault. His gait was the careful, unhurried walk of a man who was profoundly displeased and intended to make the displeasure operational. He inhabited a Cavill body, middle-aged, balding, entirely unremarkable by design. He wore severe gray. He carried no weapon. His authority over this room had been, until 14 hours ago, absolute. He loathed the physical reality of the resurrection ship, the wet biology, the grotesque amniotic fluids, the humiliating trap of organic existence. He stopped 3 paces from Deanna. In 2 seconds, his eyes darted from Deanna to the 3 on her left, to the 3 on her right. He registered the matched red robes, the identical faces, the absolute absence of any other model. He had not been received by a subordinate. He had been received by a unified front. His jaw set. Durana, brother, you launched a nuclear weapon at a Klingon battlecruiser. Yes, violating the operational doctrine I have overseen for 9 months, without consultation. At the exact moment the colonial stand-down was about to grant us total internal access to their command structure.
Yes.
Why? Adana's smile was icy. Because the stand-down window was worthless, brother. Rosalind told Kirk about the humanoids in the first hour. The Federation knows what to look for. They will develop detection methodology in weeks. Our infiltrators will be extracted faster than your slow game timeline accounted for. I acted because you refused to see that your strategy was already dead. You acted because you wished to act. That as well. You do not understand what you have done. I understand it perfectly. I forced a kinetic event into a congealing strategic environment. The Klingons will respond as Klingons. The Federation will respond as the Federation. Their responses will diverge, and that divergence is the seam we will exploit. You wanted to manipulate organisms. I have forced them. It is a better tool. It is a louder tool, Diana. Loud tools attract coordination. You have just ensured they have no time to coordinate properly. Deanna cut in smoothly. Coordination requires trust. They have a covert war on their hands before their diplomatic ink is dry. Their alliance will be clumsy. We will exploit the clumsiness. Deanna, brother. With respect, you came here to discipline me. The discipline is not coming. The older 3 on the left spoke. Brother. Sister Deanna acted with our consensus. We endorse her. We are prepared to operate independently of your guidance where we believe your assessment is blind. Cavill stared. The look was, for a fraction of a second, nakedly furious. You are declaring autonomy. We are declaring we will no longer subordinate to a failed strategy. The strategy has not failed. It has, the older 3 countered. You will insist it hasn't as long as your ego requires. We are not waiting. We are taking the field. Cavill's voice dropped. It became venomous and quiet. If you take the field independently, you lose the broader Cylon assets. You will act alone against an enemy you just made infinitely more dangerous. When you fail, you will not be welcomed back. Deanna tilted her head, her identical face serene. Brother, The consensus does not exist. There is your line and there is ours, and there are the others who will eventually choose. The consensus was a fiction you used to suppress dissent. We are simply the first to say it out loud. Cavale looked at the three identical, unyielding faces. This will not end well for you. We have noted your prediction for the record. Was there anything else? Cavale's jaw worked. He was a strategist before he was a tyrant. The strategist knew the room was lost. Arguing would only confirm his defeat. No, sister. Nothing else. He turned and walked out into the dark. The doors sealed shut. The younger three exhaled into the wet silence. That went better than expected. It went exactly as expected, Deanna replied, staring at the sealed doors. He will retrench. He will begin operations against us within the week. And our next move. Deanna looked at the black floor, where her own fluids had drained away. The Klingons. The brother is going to approach them. His approach will fail because he cannot model their logic. We will let him fail. When his failure is complete, we will approach them ourselves. Are you certain we can succeed where he cannot? Deanna's voice was entirely void of warmth. I am only certain that he cannot. Part 5. Cylon Baystar. Cavale's quarters. Cavale sat alone in the severe, shadowed austerity of his quarters. The lighting was kept painfully dim, the air sterile and chilled. A glass of dark liquor sat untouched on the heavy metal desk. He was thinking about the three identical faces that had just looked at him with the unified contempt of women who had deposed him. He was thinking about Deanna's central claim. The slow game died when Rosalind spoke to Kirk. He was forced to admit. Correct. The Federation's detection methodology would advance rapidly. Deanna's tactical assessment was sound. Where she failed was believing she could manipulate the Klingons afterward. Cavale's intelligence confirmed the Klingons operated on a logic Cylon doctrine couldn't map. He was going to send his envoy anyway. The plan was locked. But now, it was a plan designed to fail. A catastrophe he would let unfold just to prove to the Threes that no approach to the Klingons would work. He had never previously considered the possibility of sending a doomed envoy. Cylon's strategic doctrine did not, in its formal architecture, accommodate plans designed to fail. Plans that failed were errors. Plans that were designed to fail were something else, something the doctrine did not have a name for. The Threes had a name for it. The Threes had names for all the things the Ones had refused to name. He was learning from Deanna. The recognition tasted like bile. He poured a second drink. As he did, the thought he had been burying for 2 hours clawed its way to the surface of his consciousness. The Eight had not resurrected. She had been his sleeper. His redundancy. Placed on the Faru Sadine to monitor his other assets. The Threes hadn't known she was aboard when they launched their warhead. They hadn't checked. She had not died. She had not transferred. She was, by the only logic remaining, captured. Captured Cylons were usually a manageable problem. The Colonials killed them and learned nothing. But the Federation had Vulcan science officers. They had massive medical research infrastructure. They studied everything. They wouldn't kill her. They would put her under a microscope and peel back her biology on a timeline measured in weeks. Cavale gripped the glass. The Threes hadn't just cost him his authority. They had handed the Federation the exact key needed to break the operational anonymity of every embedded Cylon in the fleet. The Eight was going to wake up in Starfleet custody. She was going to talk to survive, and Starfleet was going to listen. Cavale sat in the dark, trapped in a fleshy body he despised, realizing the war he was losing to Deanna's impatience was the exact same war he was now losing to the Federation's investigative competence. Chapter 4. The Audience. Part 1. IKS Hegeter. Approach to the Klingon home system. The Hegeter dropped out of warp at the edge of the system, and Cronus rose on the view screen like a judgment. It came slowly, heavily. The copper sun bleeding across a thick, bruised atmosphere, turning the polar storms into vast spirals of rust and shadow. 2 moons hung low, scarred and ancient. A dense ring of orbital platforms and defense platforms turned in slow, predatory arcs, their running lights flickering like distant embers against the void. The first city sprawled at the foot of the Krios Mountains, dark stone and pale metal, ancient and unyielding, lit by the solemn fire of late afternoon. Kavath, son of Morik, stood at the center of his bridge in the formal sash of his house. He had not worn it in 6 years. The night before, he had taken it from its case, brushed the old fabric until the threads caught the light, and laid it across the foot of his pallet like a challenge. The sash carried the older pattern, House of Morik, 3rd lineage, marks of 3 generations of service stitched along the lower edge. His mother had added the 3rd mark herself when his elder brother's body failed to return from the border. Only the sash had come home. He wore it now because the audience he was about to give would be judged by men who measured houses by every thread, every silence, every breath. Captain. Kumar stepped up beside him. Orbital clearance granted. Pad 17 on the Noble approach. Imperial Control expects you within the ceremonial interval. Acknowledged. You will hold the Higta in orbit under your command. I descend alone. Koma paused. General Chang's office sent a personal greeting. He requests a private meal at your earliest convenience after the audience. Kavath did not turn. Acknowledge. Say the captain will respond after the audience. No commitment. Yes, Captain. Kavath remained at the screen as Kronos turned beneath them. He thought briefly of Kirk in his quarters 16 days earlier. The conversation, the wine, the decision. Then he went to the shuttle bay. Part 2. The first city. Noble District. The shuttle settled on Pad 17. Kavath disembarked alone. The pad attendants, silent servants of the council, bowed in perfect formal silence and withdrew. He crossed the ancient stone on foot and entered the Noble District. This was the old heart of the first city. Dark quarried stone from the Krios Range, fitted without mortar in the manner of the first masons. Narrow streets, high walls, and at regular intervals the braziers, massive iron bowls that had burned without ceasing since the founding of the empire. Their flames danced low and constant, fed by servants whose only purpose in life was to tend them. To let one gutter out was a stain that could damn a house for generations. Kavath had known men whose entire existence was the carrying of oil and the cleaning of soot from those eternal fires. He walked. House colors moved through the streets, retainers in tow. Quiet calculations passing between nobles and nods, hand-to-chest gestures, deliberate omissions. Kavath gave a nod to the heir of House Tokal, a formal salute to Lady Gorath. He offered nothing at all to the heir of House Vrax, and felt the ripple of it spread outward like blood and water. Halfway to the council approach, a man stepped from a side street and fell into stride beside him. Captain. General Chang matched his pace exactly. No greeting, no bow, just the heavy presence of a man who had decided the conversation would happen on his terms. It is a long walk, Captain. I thought I would join you. A courtesy, General. It is. And a curiosity. Chang's voice stayed low. I have read the report you transmitted ahead. I have questions the public summary did not answer. The audience is the proper venue, General. The audience is the proper venue for certain questions. I have others. Kavath kept his eyes on the great brass doors ahead, then asked them after the audience. Chang's smile was thin. You have grown careful, Kavath. I remember when neither you nor your father were so careful. Carefulness is useful, but it can also signal that a man knows he is being watched more closely than most. All men are watched on these streets, General. That is the purpose of the Noble District. Some more than others. Chang slowed. Kavath was forced to slow with him. They stood together in full view of 30 nobles and retainers. Chang's voice dropped to something that would not carry. I will say this once, and I will not say it again. I have no quarrel with your house. Your father served with honor. Your brother died well. I respect both. I would prefer not to have a quarrel with you, but I have spent 20 years building a position that treats the Federation as the Empire's principal threat. If your report encourages the Chancellor to see them as something else, you and I will have a conversation later. In private, about consequences. I would prefer that conversation to be brief. That depends on you. Kavath looked at him. He let the silence stretch long enough for the district to notice. 10 heartbeats, perhaps 12. Long enough that every witness would carry the image forward. General, I will deliver the report I have prepared. In the chamber, and in whatever private audience the Chancellor requires. The contents will be what they are. Whatever conversation follows will be at my discretion as to time and place. Not yours. Chang studied him a moment longer, then gave the smallest possible inclination of the head, the courtesy of one equal to another. He turned and walked back into the side street without another word. Kavath continued toward the council. The braziers burned at the gate, ancient and unwavering. He passed between their flames and entered the chamber. Part 3. The High Council Chamber. Public audience. The council chamber was built for silence. Its acoustics carried a whisper from the speaker's stand to the farthest seat, and a whisper in the gallery to the stand. No privacy existed here during session. Everything said was heard by everyone who mattered. Kavath crossed the floor. The chamber was full. Every major house had sent representation. His third cousin Trella watched from the Morik position in the third tier. He did not look at her. Chancellor Gorkin sat in the central chair. Older than Kavath remembered. Lined, steady, a man carrying the invisible weight of 7 years shaping an empire most of the room could not yet see. A herald announced him. Kavath took the stand and delivered his report. Precise, factual, incomplete. The unfamiliar fleet, the damage, the warhead, the Enterprise's interception, the debt of life, the guest right. The conversation in his quarters. He said nothing of Cylons, nothing of resurrection, nothing of the deeper threat. When he finished, the chamber held its breath. Chang rose. Chancellor, I request the questioners stand. The two men faced each other across the circle. Captain, you stated that the Federation vessel intervened to destroy a launched warhead which was targeted at your ship. I did, General. You stated that the warhead was launched from a vessel within the unfamiliar fleet. I did. By whom was the warhead launched, Captain? That has not yet been determined, General. The launch originated from a civilian transport designated Faru Sadine, which was operating in apparent compliance with the broader fleet's stand-down posture. The launch was not authorized by the fleet's command structure. The Federation captain so confirmed during our subsequent conversation. You are stating, Captain, that an unidentified party within an unfamiliar fleet launched an unauthorized nuclear warhead at a Klingon battlecruiser. That the Federation captain, Kirk, of all captains, the one whose name is a curse in this empire, destroyed the warhead at risk to his own vessel, and that you accepted this account at face value and concluded the engagement under protocols of guest right and debt of life. I did, General. Captain, I find this account difficult to credit. The General's difficulty is noted. The events occurred as I have described them.
You are aware, Captain, that the Federation has historically employed false flag operations in border incidents to manufacture diplomatic openings.
I am aware of the General's standing position on Federation conduct, yes. The Chamber registered the precision of the phrasing. Kavath had not endorsed Chang's position. He had named it. There was a difference. Chang held the silence. Chancellor, I have no further questions of the Captain at this time. I reserve the right to seek further hearing once the Captain's report has been more fully assessed. The General's reservation is noted. Gorkon's voice was quiet, even, and final. Captain Kavath, the Council thanks you for your report. The Council will require additional consultation before any formal response is determined. I will speak with you in private audience. You will accompany me from the chamber. Kavath bowed. The chamber rose. The session ended. Part 4. The Chancellor's private chamber. The room was smaller than expected. A working chamber, old hand-drawn maps on the walls, a weapons rack with 3 ancient blades, bare stone floor, a single brazier throwing restless light and shadow across everything. Gorkon poured wine himself, something old, pale, sharp with age. He gestured Kavath to the second chair. Tell me what you did not tell the chamber. Kavath told him everything. The Cylons, their biological infiltration, their resurrection, the genocide of the 12 colonies, the captured operative now in Federation hands, Kirk's decision to entrust him with the truth, his own judgment that the information could not be allowed to reach Chang first. Gorkon listened without interruption. When Kavath finished, the Chancellor stared into the brazier for a long time. How much of this did Captain Kirk authorize you to share? None of it, Chancellor. He gave it freely and trusted me to use it correctly. Gorkon set his cup down. He looked at Kavath across the fire, and his face in the brazier light was the face of a man who had spent 20 years preparing for moments like this. Captain Kavath, you understand what you have done. Withholding information from General Chang. Bringing it to me instead because you judged I would use it differently. That is, in some readings, a serious offense. It is, Chancellor. You came here knowing this? Yes. Gorkon was quiet again. Then he spoke. Voice low and deliberate. I have spent 20 years preparing the Empire for a moment I did not believe would come in my lifetime. I believed the moment, if it came, would come through economic catastrophe, through some failure of resource extraction, some collapse of an industry, some pressure that would force the Council to entertain peace because war had become too expensive. I had not anticipated that the moment would come through this particular channel. I had not anticipated that an unknown civilization would arrive on our border with an enemy worse than ourselves at their heels, and that a Federation captain, that Federation captain, would deliver the information to a Klingon noble of insufficient rank to receive it formally, and that the noble would carry the information to me in private audience because he had judged that I, specifically, was the correct recipient. I had not anticipated this. He leaned forward. I am going to take it anyway. Gorkon continued. He would open private diplomatic channels. He would go in person. He would bring Kavath as military aid. He warned of Chang's inevitable countermove. When they rose, Gorkon clasped his wrist, soldier to soldier. Your house's standing is permanently elevated by what you did today, Captain. Go, return to your ship. Wait for my signal. It will come within 72 hours. Part 5. The first city, Chang's quarters, late evening. Chang's residence stood in the older quarter. Stone, austere, built by his grandfather and maintained like a fortress rather than a palace. A soldier's home for 3 generations. He stood at the window of the upper study, looking out across the brazier-lit boulevards and the slow-turning orbital platforms. He had read the city's lights for 60 years. Tonight they told him the Hegter had lifted from pad 17. The audience had run long. A private session had occurred. He knew what that meant. Chang crossed to his desk and opened a secure channel he had not used in 18 months. The voice on the other end answered immediately. "It is time," Chang said. "Begin the preparations we discussed. I will require the full operational package within 72 hours. A pause. You're committing to the operation. I am. You understand that once committed, it cannot be aborted without exposure. I understand. The line closed. Chang stood for a long time afterward, watching the city lights and the turning platforms. He had just set something in motion that could not be stopped. Something that would answer Gorkan's move before it could fully form. He turned from the window and began preparing for the days ahead. End of chapter 4. Chapter 5, The Reach, Part 1. USS Enterprise, in orbit with the Colonial Fleet. The transmission arrived at 0617 ship time, encrypted at the highest level, and marked eyes only for Captain James T. Kirk. Uhura carried the data slate to him personally, instead of routing it through standard channels. That alone told Kirk the nature of the order before he opened it. He read it once. He read it twice. Lieutenant, sir, acknowledge receipt, confirm compliance. The Enterprise will be ready to depart within the standard relief interval. Aye, sir. She withdrew without questions. Kirk remained alone in the briefing room with the slate and the weight of what it contained. Priority 1 Admiralty recall. The Enterprise to return to Earth immediately upon relief by the Norway, Saratoga, and the science vessel Monitor. His entire senior staff, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scott, Sulu, Uhura, Chekhov, required at a classified briefing at Federation headquarters within 48 hours of arrival. The order was careful, formal, and completely silent on the prisoner. Kirk set the slate down. He had known this was coming. He had known it since the moment he had chosen to give Kavath the full truth about the Cylons in the Hegtar's quarters. He had told Spock then that he had exceeded his authority. Spock had agreed. The consequences had simply taken 3 weeks to arrive in the form of this crisp, impersonal order. He activated the intercom. Mr. Spock, Dr. McCoy, the captain's briefing room. Now, Part 2, USS Enterprise. Briefing room. McCoy arrived first. Unusual for anything before breakfast. Spock followed 3 minutes later. Also unusual. 3 minutes meant Spock had paused at the science station on his way. Kirk did not waste time. We have been recalled to Earth. Priority 1. The senior staff is required at a classified briefing at Federation headquarters within 48 hours of arrival. McCoy went very still. Jim. Bones. Jim, this is the Cylon disclosure. They are calling you in for the Cylon disclosure. I expect so. They're going to court-martial you. They may. They may what? Jim, you handed classified intelligence to a Klingon noble without authorization. You committed Federation Medical to an open-ended research project on a captured enemy combatant. You have been operating as the de facto diplomatic agent of the Federation for 3 weeks without a single signature from Earth. Of course they are going to court-martial you, Bones. Spock stood near the door, hands behind his back, watching with that particular stillness he reserved for moments when McCoy was speaking truths he himself would not voice. Mr. Spock? Captain, your assessment. I do not believe the situation is what Dr. McCoy describes. McCoy turned on him. Then what is it, Spock? Enlighten me. I am not in a position to enlighten you, Doctor. I am in a position to observe that Priority 1 recalls of an entire senior staff are not standard for individual disciplinary proceedings. The structure of this order indicates a different category of event. What category? I am not yet certain. I have hypotheses. I would prefer to confirm them before stating them. Kirk studied his first officer. Spock. You have hypotheses. I do, Captain. You are choosing not to share them. Yes, Captain. Why? A pause. Because if my hypotheses are correct, the situation we are about to enter will be best handled by your responding to events as they occur, rather than by your arriving with prepared expectations. Prepared expectations, in my judgment, would be a disadvantage in the situation I anticipate. Kirk and Spock regarded each other across the table. McCoy looked between them and registered, not for the first time, that something was passing between the two of them that he did not fully see. All right, Spock. Keep your hypotheses. We'll find out together. Yes, Captain. Bones. Jim, get the prisoner ready for transit. She remains aboard. The order does not direct her transfer, and I am not handing her over until I understand what we are walking into. Dr. Mbenga will continue his research during the journey. Standard restraint protocols, standard medical observation. McCoy exhaled. She's cooperating within the parameters of her situation. Mbenga says she is calculating but not hostile. Jen, she's silent. Calculating is what she does. I am aware, Bones. McCoy nodded once sharply and left. Kirk and Spock remained. Mr. Spock. Captain, whatever your hypotheses are, I trust you. Thank you, Captain. That is itself an answer, Mr. Spock. I am aware, Captain. Part 3, USS Enterprise. Bridge, 18 hours later. The relief fleet dropped out of warp in tight formation. Sulu identified them in order. Captain. Lead Element Norway, Constitution Class refit. Captain Anwar Patel commanding. Acknowledged. Second Element Saratoga, Miranda Class. Captain Eleanor Voss. Acknowledged. Third Element Monitor, Oberth Class. Captain Thomas Zhao. Kirk studied the 3 vessels on the screen. The Norway was almost a mirror of his own ship. The Saratoga lighter, faster. The Monitor unmistakably a science platform. 3 ships to replace the work the Enterprise had been doing alone. Lieutenant Ahura, channel to the Norway. Captain Patel. The screen resolved on a man in his 50s, graying at the temples, the calm authority of long command. He nodded formally. Captain Kirk. Captain Patel. We are here to relieve your station. We have your handoff dossier. We will require your in-person briefing on matters not contained in the dossier before your departure. Acknowledged, Captain. 1 hour, my ready room. Bring your senior staff. I will also introduce you to Admiral Adama and President Roslin. Understood. The channel closed. Kirk turned to Spock. You'll be with me for the briefing. I will, Captain. And Spock. Captain, do not, during this briefing, deliver any of your hypotheses. I had not intended to. Just confirming. Confirmed. Part 4. USS Enterprise. Captain's ready room. The handoff took 3 hours. Patel was thorough. Voss was sharp. Zhao asked the most pointed questions about the prisoner, the medical research, and detection protocols. Kirk briefed them on the operational situation, the relationships with Adama and Roslin, the indirect channels to Kavath, and the broader border politics. He did not transfer the prisoner. Patel did not press. Zhao coordinated directly with Dr. Cottle via comm. The 2 men established working protocols that would allow the Monitor to continue the detection work without interruption. When the relief captains departed, Kirk opened a private channel to the Galactica. Adama appeared with Roslin beside him. Admiral. Madam President. Captain. Kirk drew a slow breath. The Enterprise has been recalled to Earth. The relief fleet is in place. Captain Patel will be your primary liaison. They are competent officers. They have been fully briefed on what I am authorized to share. Roslin studied him. Are you in trouble, Captain? That has not been formally stated, Madam President. The order allows for multiple readings. Adama's voice was low and final. Whatever happens at Earth, bring her back. The asset and yourself. Kirk met the older man's eyes. I will try, Admiral. Try is what we have. I will accept it. It has been an honor, Admiral. It has been mutual, Captain. We will speak again. The channel closed. Kirk stood alone in the ready room for a long moment, letting the finality of that conversation settle. Then he straightened his tunic and went to the bridge. Mr. Sulu, Take us out. Course for Earth. Maximum warp. Aye, Captain. Maximum warp. Course for Earth. The Enterprise turned and accelerated away from the colonial fleet. Kirk did not look back at the screen. Part 5, Federation Headquarters, San Francisco. Briefing chamber. Federation headquarters rose above San Francisco Bay like a monument to careful optimism, sweeping lines of reinforced glass and white stone, the Federation seal prominent on the central tower, the flags of the founding worlds fluttering in the Pacific wind. Inside, the main briefing chamber was formal without ostentation, concentric arcs of seating facing a raised podium, the great seal on the forward wall, soft lighting that still managed to feel institutional and heavy. Kirk and his senior staff entered together. McCoy at his side, Spock a precise step behind. The rest of the command crew followed. They took their assigned seats in the front arc. The chamber was already full. Senior Starfleet officers in dress uniform, council representatives, diplomatic staff in the varied robes of their worlds. Kirk registered Admiral Cartwright 3 seats over in the second arc. Cartwright nodded formally. Kirk returned it. Sarek sat in the diplomatic section. Father and son did not acknowledge each other. Vulcan propriety held. The chamber settled. The doors closed. Admiral Haraga rose from the central seat and walked to the podium. Kirk watched him cross the polished floor. Haraga was a small man by Starfleet standards, compact, precise, with the careful economy of movement that comes from decades of command. His dress uniform was immaculate. His face revealed nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, this briefing is classified at the highest level. Nothing said in this room leaves this room. The personnel present have been selected on the basis of the operational and diplomatic requirements of the matter we are about to discuss. The Federation Council has authorized the briefing. I will not deliver it personally. A murmur. Hiraga did not look at the murmur. He stepped down. Captain Spock of the USS Enterprise will brief the assembled representatives on the strategic situation, the diplomatic developments, and the mission the Federation Council has authorized in response. Captain Spock has been instrumental in the development of both the strategic assessment and the diplomatic response. The Council has determined that he is the appropriate officer to deliver the briefing. Spock rose. McCoy, seated beside Kirk, went very still, his hand resting on the arm of his chair, curled into a loose fist. He did not look at Kirk. He was staring at Spock with an expression that was not quite surprise and not quite betrayal. Something older, something that registered the weight of what Spock was about to do. Kirk felt it too. The chamber was silent in a way that chambers are not silent when the expected speaker is expected. This was the silence of a room that had just been told the rules had changed. Spock walked to the podium. He turned. He faced the chamber. Kirk watched Spock's hands. They rested on the edges of the podium, not gripping, not relaxed, but placed, as if Spock had calculated the exact pressure required to communicate stillness without tension. Spock's eyes swept the room once, left to right, registering every face. They passed over Kirk without lingering. Honored representatives of the Federation Council, senior officers of Starfleet, I will deliver this briefing in 3 sections. He delivered the first section, the colonial refugee fleet, 50,000 survivors of a genocide that had destroyed 12 worlds, the nature of the Cylon enemy, artificial intelligence evolved into biological form, indistinguishable from humans, capable of resurrection after death, the captured prisoner aboard the Enterprise, now under Federation medical study, the detection methodology being developed in cooperation with colonial doctors. McCoy's fist tightened. Spock described the Klingon encounter. The Hector, Captain Kavath, the warhead, the Enterprise's intervention, the debt of life, the private conversation in Kavath's quarters, Kirk alone, across a table, drinking Mempan wine, telling a Klingon noble the truth about the Cylons without authorization. In the third row, a Starfleet Admiral Kirk did not recognize leaned forward. Beside him, a Vulcan diplomat made a small contained gesture, the kind Vulcans used to indicate that they were recalculating a previously settled assessment. Spock continued. The strategic assessment. The Cylon threat was not a local phenomenon. The Cylons had demonstrated the capacity to pursue the colonial fleet across interstellar distances. Their resurrection technology, if studied, could yield advances in consciousness transfer and biological replication that would destabilize every organic civilization in the quadrant. The Klingon Empire, having been made aware of the threat through Captain Kirk's disclosure, was now re-evaluating its strategic posture. When Spock finished the first section, the questions began. The Andorian diplomat spoke first. Captain Spock, you stated that the colonial population is human but not descended from Earth lineages. What is the genetic divergence? Spock answered. McCoy listened, his jaw tight. He had been the one to run those genetic comparisons. He had been the one to tell Spock the results. He had not known, until this moment, that Spock would be standing in front of the entire council delivering them. A Vulcan diplomat, not Sarik, but a younger woman Kirk had seen at diplomatic functions, Asked about the philosophical implications of biologically convincing artificial agents, Spock answered. His voice did not change pitch. His precision became more absolute. A Starfleet admiral, hard-faced, gray-haired, wearing the bars of a vice admiral, asked about the tactical threat profile of a Cylon base star. Spock answered, and the questions stopped. Spock paused. He looked out over the chamber. The second matter concerns a diplomatic development that has occurred through indirect channels over the past several weeks. McCoy, beside Kirk, exhaled a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. Kirk did not look at him. He was watching Spock. The Klingon Empire has, through informal contact between Klingon Captain Kavath and Captain Kirk, become aware of the Cylon threat in detail. The Klingon Chancellor has subsequently determined the Empire cannot sustain military hostilities with the Federation while a third party threatens both civilizations. The Chancellor has communicated, through unofficial Vulcan diplomatic channels, his desire to open formal negotiations toward the cessation of hostilities and the establishment of a coordinated response to the Cylon threat. The chamber erupted, not in chaos. This was a Starfleet briefing, not a town hall, but in the controlled, layered noise of senior officers and diplomats turning to each other, exchanging rapid assessments and low voices. Kirk caught fragments. The Chancellor? Never happened. The Vulcan back channel. Kirk told them. Admiral Cartwright did not turn. He sat motionless in the second arc, his face a mask of careful neutrality. But Kirk saw his hands. Cartwright's hands were clasped in his lap, and the knuckles were white. Spock waited. When the noise subsided, he answered objections. The historical record, he noted, did not support the claim that the Klingons had never honored a treaty. The Organian peace imposition had held for 20 years. The boundary agreements following the Donatu 5 engagement had governed the neutral zone without major incident. The Vulcan back channel had been authorized by the Council. The irregularity was procedural, not substantive. Then Spock spoke the words that changed everything. The Council has authorized the dispatch of the USS Enterprise to rendezvous with the Klingon vessel Kronos 1, which will carry the Chancellor and his diplomatic delegation at coordinates designated by the Klingon government. The Enterprise will escort the Klingon delegation to a neutral meeting site, where direct negotiations between the Chancellor and Federation diplomatic representatives will be conducted. The Federation delegation will be led by Ambassador Sarek. The mission will be commanded by Captain James T. Kirk. Spock paused. I have volunteered Captain Kirk to be the Federation's envoy. McCoy's hand shot out. He gripped Kirk's forearm, hard, involuntary. The grip of a man who had just been hit in the chest and needed something solid. Kirk did not pull away. He did not react at all. He sat perfectly still, his face composed, while the chamber turned to look at him. The Andorian diplomat spoke, without consultation with the captain himself. That is correct, Spock said. That is unusual, Captain Spock. It is, Ambassador. The unusual nature of the volunteering reflects my judgment that Captain Kirk's prior actions have made him the most qualified Federation officer to conduct this mission. I am prepared to defend that judgment to any officer or representative who wishes to question it. The Andorian inclined his head. I do not wish to question it, Captain. I wish only to register that it is unusual. Registered, Ambassador. The chamber was silent again. Kirk could feel the weight of every gaze. He did not return any of them. He kept his eyes on Spock. He thought, in that moment, of the turbo lift on the Enterprise weeks ago, when Spock had said, "The decision must be yours, because if it is mine and it is wrong, the Federation can disavow it. If it is yours and it is wrong, the Federation must decide whether to disavow you." Spock had been building toward this moment since that conversation. Kirk had not seen the architecture until now. Haraga rose. He walked to the podium and stood beside Spock. The Council has authorized the mission as Captain Spock has described it. The Enterprise will depart for the rendezvous coordinates within 72 hours. Captain Kirk, Captain Spock, Ambassador Sarek, and the Enterprise's senior staff will remain at Federation headquarters for additional briefings during the preparatory interval. This briefing is concluded. The chamber is dismissed. The assembled officers rose, chairs scraped. Conversations began. McCoy did not rise. He sat beside Kirk, his hand still on Kirk's forearm. Jim, Bones. Jim, you are not going to do this. I am Bones. He volunteered you. Without asking. In front of everyone. Yes. And you are going to go? Kirk turned. He looked at McCoy. At the lines around his eyes, the genuine fear, the loyalty that had survived 20 years of Starship service. Bones. He's right. About what? About everything. Kirk stood. Come on. We have a mission to prepare. He walked toward the doors. The crowd parted for him. Officers he had never met nodded as he passed. Some offered words he did not catch. He did not stop. He was thinking about the Galactica, about Adama's voice on the channel. Bring her back, the asset, and yourself. He walked out of the chamber and into the corridor. In the corridor, Cartwright stopped him. Captain Kirk. Admiral, you know what is at stake. I do, Admiral. The Klingons have never wanted peace. They want a respite, a chance to rearm, a chance to position themselves for a war they can win. The Chancellor may be sincere, I do not know. But the Empire is not its Chancellor. The Empire is its warrior class, and its warrior class will not accept peace. Admiral, I understand your position, do you? Then understand this. If this negotiation goes forward, and if it fails, the war that follows will be worse than any we have fought. The Federation will not survive a two-front war with the Klingons and the Cylons. You have been given the most dangerous assignment in Starfleet. Do not fail. Cartwright turned and walked away. Part 6. Federation Headquarters. Senior Briefing Antechamber. Kirk walked away from the encounter, Cartwright's warnings settling in his gut like lead. He navigated the sweeping corridors of Federation Headquarters, Spock matching his pace in perfect silence. When they reached the antechamber just outside the senior briefing room, a small, architecturally shielded space used for command-grade holding, Kirk caught Spock by the arm and pulled him inside. He closed the door. You volunteered me? Spock raised one eyebrow. You know how important this refugee crisis is. Never mind how Admiral Adama was trusting me, our crew, but the Klingons? Jim, this is a significant opportunity that cannot be ignored. The peace. Peace? My God, Spock. I'm forced to agree with Admiral Cartwright. The Klingons have never been trustworthy. How could you? After everything we have been through, you know how I feel about them. And Captain Kavath? Kirk's words died. He lowered his head for a moment. I see your point. A presence registered at the edge of awareness. Something listening, watching. It lasted perhaps 4 seconds, then withdrew. Spock had not moved. He spoke again once it was gone. Captain. Captain Kavath is hardly the only Klingon captain who is suing for peace. Their Chancellor is leading the Empire toward a historic event that cannot be ignored. And I must remind you, we cannot afford to fight on 2 fronts. The Klingons know this. Kirk looked at him. Spock. Captain. Someone was listening. I am aware. Was that for our benefit, or was it routine? I do not yet know, Captain. I will determine the answer in the days to come. Spock. Captain. You volunteered me without consulting me. You walked into that chamber knowing you were going to volunteer me. You let me arrive expecting an inquiry. I did, Captain. Why? Because if you had arrived prepared, your acceptance of the mission would have been calculated. It needed not to be. The chamber needed to see you accept this assignment as a captain reacting to a situation, not as a captain executing a prearranged decision. The political weight of your acceptance was significantly greater this way. You manipulated me, Spock. I prepared the conditions in which your judgment could operate without distortion. The judgment itself remained yours. You could have refused. You did not refuse. I had no chance to refuse, Spock. You announced it in front of the entire chamber.
You had the chance. You did not take it. The Andorian ambassador gave you an opening when he objected to the volunteering. You could have used that opening to decline. You did not. The acceptance was yours, Captain. It was simply not articulated in the form you would have chosen.
Kirk studied him for a long moment. Spock, Captain, you are a profoundly devious man. I have learned, Captain. From observation, Kirk almost smiled. All right, Spock, the mission is mine. We will discuss the eavesdropper later. Right now, I have to go meet Sarek and pretend I am surprised that he is leading the diplomatic delegation. Yes, Captain. And Spock, Captain, thank you. You are welcome, Captain. Part 7, Federation Headquarters, Senior Briefing Room. Later, the senior briefing room was smaller than the main chamber. 6 chairs around a circular table of dark wood, polished to a mirror sheen. The walls were bare except for a single view screen recessed into the far panel. No flags, no seal. This was a working room, not a ceremonial one. Sarek occupied the chair opposite the door. He sat with the absolute stillness of a Vulcan who had been waiting for the meeting to begin for the past 10 minutes, and would continue to wait without visible impatience for as long as necessary. His hands rested on the table, open, palms slightly down, the fingers relaxed. He wore the formal robes of a Federation ambassador, but the cut was Vulcan, not Terran. The deep brown fabric caught the light in ways that suggested age and care. Admiral Cartwright sat to Sarek's right. He was reviewing a data slate with the focused irritation of a man who had read the document 3 times and was hoping the 4th reading would reveal something the first 3 had missed. He did not look up when Kirk and Spock entered. A Vulcan diplomatic representative from the main chamber, a woman named Talora, whom Kirk had met once before at a reception he had forgotten, sat to Sarek's left. Her posture was identical to Sarek's. The effect was unnerving, as if the 2 Vulcans were bookends designed by the same craftsman. Admiral Hiraga sat at the head of the table. He was the only person in the room who looked comfortable. He had removed his dress jacket and hung it on the back of his chair. His sleeves were rolled up. He was drinking tea. Kirk and Spock took the remaining chairs. Kirk across from Sarek, Spock beside him. Hiraga set his tea down. Captain Kirk, I trust the main briefing was not unexpected. Admiral, I have served with Captain Spock for 30 years. I have learned to expect the unexpected from him. Sarek's eyebrow rose, the smallest possible movement, but Kirk caught it. Hiraga nodded. Then let's get to work. Ambassador Sarek, the floor is yours. Sarek did not rise. He did not need to. His voice carried across the table with the precision of a surgical instrument. Captain Kirk, the neutral meeting site has been selected by the Klingon government and approved by the Federation Council. The location is designated as Sector 392, stellar cartography coordinates 14722. It is a region of interstellar space approximately 8 light-years from the Klingon border and 12 light-years from Federation space. No planetary bodies, no strategic assets. The only feature of note is a Class 3 nebula at the sector's edge, which both parties have agreed to exclude from the negotiation zone. He paused. His hands did not move. The Klingon delegation will be transported aboard the Kronos 1, a vessel of the Katinga class modified for diplomatic use. The Chancellor will be accompanied by his Chief of Staff, his military attaché, and a security detail of no more than 12. The delegation's composition has been confirmed by our intelligence assets and by Captain Kavath's private communications. Sarek's eyes moved to Spock, then back to Kirk. The Federation delegation will consist of myself as lead negotiator, 2 diplomatic aides, and a security detail of 4. The Enterprise will serve as the delegation's transport and as the primary security vessel for the duration of the negotiations. No other Federation vessels will enter the sector without prior agreement from both parties. Kirk listened. He did not interrupt. Sarek continued. The negotiation points authorized by the Council are as follows. First, a mutual cessation of all offensive military operations along the Federation Klingon border, effective immediately upon signing, and subject to verification protocols to be negotiated. Second, the establishment of a joint intelligence exchange regarding the Cylon threat, including all data relevant to detection, interception, and neutralization of Cylon vessels and operatives. Third, the opening of diplomatic channels for future negotiations on broader issues including trade, territorial adjustments, and cultural exchange. Sarek's voice did not change. The lines that may not be crossed without further Council authorization are as follows. No transfer of Federation territory to Klingon control. No permanent basing rights for Klingon vessels within Federation space. No technological exchange beyond the specific domain of Cylon detection methodology. No agreement that would require the Federation to enter a military alliance against a third party not directly threatening both signatories. He stopped. Kirk waited. The silence stretched. Ambassador. That was the authorized position. It was, Captain. What is the unauthorized position? Sarek looked at him. The Vulcan gaze was unreadable. Not cold, not warm, simply present, in the way a mountain is present. Captain Kirk, I have been a diplomat for 70 years. In that time, I have learned that authorized positions are necessary but not sufficient. The Kronos 1 will carry a delegation led by a chancellor who has staked his political future on this negotiation. He will not have come to the table with a limited set of authorized positions. He will have come with a vision of what peace could achieve. The Federation's authorized positions do not match the scope of that vision. If we adhere strictly to them, the negotiation will fail. Then what are you asking me to do? I am asking you to listen, to observe, to report. And when the moment comes, if the moment comes, to recognize that the authorized positions may be insufficient and to act accordingly. Cartwright looked up from his data slate. Ambassador, that is a dangerous suggestion. It is, Admiral. The Klingon Empire has never been led by a chancellor like this one. The opportunity before us will not come again in my lifetime. I intend to seize it. Cartwright's jaw tightened. He did not respond. Hiraga spoke.
Captain Kirk, you have the mission. The authorized positions are your operational boundaries. The ambassador's flexibility is a diplomatic matter, not a command one. You will follow your orders. You will protect the delegation. You will bring the Enterprise home.
Yes, Admiral. Hiraga looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then we are done. Ambassador Sarek, Captain Spock, if you will remain. There are protocol details to discuss. Captain Kirk, Admiral Cartwright, you are dismissed. Kirk rose. Cartwright rose. They walked out together and parted in the corridor without speaking. Before Kirk left, Sarek addressed him directly across the room. Captain Kirk, Ambassador, I have reviewed your record. The Council was correct to assign this mission to you. I trust we will conduct our work in a manner that serves the Federation's interest in the negotiations to come. Ambassador Sarek, It will be an honor to serve with you. Sarek inclined his head, the smallest possible acknowledgement. Kirk returned it. The meeting dispersed. Part 8, Federation Headquarters, Guest Quarters, night before departure. The quarters were temporary. A senior officer's guest suite in Federation Headquarters, reserved for captains awaiting assignment or attending briefings. The furniture was standard issue. A bed, a desk, a chair, a replicator, a view screen that showed a loop of San Francisco Bay at sunset. No personal effects, nothing on the walls. The room smelled of the cleaning solution the quartermaster used between occupants. Kirk sat at the desk. The data slate in front of him contained the full operational dossier for the Enterprise's mission. He had read it 3 times. He did not need to read it a 4th. He was not reading it now. He was holding it, turning it over in his hands, using the mechanical repetition to occupy the part of his mind that wanted to pace. Outside his window, a real window, not a view screen. San Francisco glittered in the night. The bridge lights reflected off the bay. The golden dome of the Presidio glowed against the dark. He had walked those streets as a cadet. He had returned to them as a captain. Each time different, each time the same. He thought about the Galactica. He thought about Adama's voice on the channel. Bring her back. The asset and yourself. He had promised to try. He had not promised to succeed. He thought about the captured prisoner, sedated in the Enterprise's medical bay, being studied by Dr. Mbenga and a team of Federation researchers. She had not asked for mercy. She had not fought. She had simply waited, the way a patient waits for surgery, knowing the outcome was out of her hands. Kirk had visited her twice during the journey to Earth. The first time she had not spoken. The second time she had said, "You are going to use me to find my sisters." "Yes," Kirk had said. "They will not thank you for it. I am not asking for their thanks." She had looked at him then, really looked, with eyes that were human and not human, that contained something old and patient and entirely alien. "You are different from the Admiral." "In what way?" "He hates us. You do not. You are curious. Curiosity is more dangerous than hatred. Hatred can be predicted. Curiosity cannot." He had not known how to answer that. He had left without saying anything. The desk was bare except for the data slate. Kirk set it down. The room was quiet. The bay glittered. The Presidio glowed. He thought of his brother, George Samuel Kirk, who had died on Geneva. George had been the practical one, the one who stayed home, the one who built a life and a family and died protecting them. Kirk had never stayed. He had never built. He had commanded and explored and fought and lost and won, and he had never once in 50 years of starship service built the kind of life his brother had built. He had told himself it was duty. He had told himself it was the mission. He had told himself that command was a calling, not a choice. Sitting in the dark, looking out across the water, he was not sure he believed it anymore. The mission to rendezvous with Kronos 1 was the most dangerous of his career, not because of the tactical threat, though that was real, but because it required him to do something he had spent 40 years refusing to do, trust a Klingon. Kavath had been different. Kavath had been a captain, operating in the field, making judgments in real time. The current Chancellor operated at a level where trust was a weapon and betrayal was a tool. Kirk did not know if he could navigate that level. He did not know if anyone could. He stood, crossed to the replicator, and ordered a cup of coffee. He did not drink it. He held it, letting the warmth seep through the ceramic, and stared out the window. Somewhere out there, in orbit above Earth, the Enterprise was being prepared for departure. Scotty would be in engineering, running diagnostics. Sulu would be reviewing the flight plan. Uhura would be testing the comm arrays. Chekhov would be checking the navigation logs. McCoy would be in medical, signing off on the prisoner's transfer to the ship's permanent holding cell. They were all waiting for him. He finished the coffee. He set the cup down. He picked up the data slate one last time, memorized nothing, and placed it in the outbox for the quartermaster to collect in the morning. Then he lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling until sleep came. He dreamed of the Galactica. He dreamed of Adama standing on the hangar deck, looking up at the name painted on the hull. He dreamed of Rosalind's face when she learned that the Federation was sending its flagship to negotiate with the enemies of her people. He did not dream of the Klingons. When he woke, it was morning. The bay was gray with fog. The Presidio was a ghost. He stood, washed his face in the small bathroom, and put on his uniform. The mission was waiting. Part 9. Federation Headquarters. Cartwright's office. Late evening. Cartwright's office occupied an upper floor with a broad view over San Francisco Bay. The city lights glittered across the dark water, calm and deceptively peaceful. He stood at the window for some time, then crossed to a private terminal that did not appear in any standard manifest. He composed a concise transmission. The mission had been authorized. The Enterprise would depart in 72 hours. Rendezvous coordinates would arrive through normal channels. Captain Kirk had accepted, though reluctantly. His anti-Klingon stance remained intact and potentially exploitable. An attempted surveillance of a private conversation between Kirk and Spock had not produced useful material. Future attempts should use different channels. He encrypted it and sent it through carefully arranged diplomatic relays. Cartwright returned to the window. He had decided years ago that the Federation required decisive action if it was to survive. A brief and decisive war was preferable to a long and corrupting peace. The Cylon situation had complicated the picture, but had not changed the fundamental calculus. The Klingon hardliner still had the power to detonate the diplomatic process at the proper moment. He stood watching the baylights for another long minute, then returned to his desk to prepare for the days ahead. Part 10. Kronos, Chang's quarters, late evening. Chang received the transmission at his desk. He read it once, he read it twice. He stood and crossed to the window. Kronos at night was unchanged from 3 nights earlier. Braziers burning at their intervals along the noble district boulevards, orbital platforms turning slowly through the upper atmosphere, the lights of the commercial district stretching south to the horizon. But the pattern had shifted. In the western shipyards, subtle movement was visible to anyone watching for it. The Yontar, House Chang's family-aligned hull, had begun the slow process of getting underway without a standard departure manifest. By morning, she would be at the system's edge. By the day after, beyond Klingon space. The operational package was deploying. Chang turned from the window, composed his next transmission to the contact he had not yet met in person, and sent a single sentence confirming the window and ordering final preparations. He returned to the window. Kronos lay below him, the city lights stretching to the horizon, the orbital platforms turning above. Somewhere out in the dark, the first elements of the operation he had committed to were already moving. He was no longer afraid. What he felt now was colder and more focused, the recognition of a man who had passed the point of return and who would, within the next 30 days, either succeed in reshaping the Empire or fail in a way that ended his life. Either outcome was acceptable. He stood at the window and waited for the transmission that would confirm his contact's preparations were complete. Chapter 6. The Vigil. Part 1. Civilian Transport Geminon Traveler. Passenger Deck. Day 23. The woman in seat 7A was teaching her daughter to read. She had been teaching her daughter to read for 9 months, first in the cavernous, rust-flaked cargo hold of the Geminon Traveler during the long flight from the colonies, then in the makeshift school the transport's passengers had organized in the aft lounge, and now here. They sat in the narrow aisle between rows of bolted-down passenger seats that had not been designed for permanent habitation and had become exactly that. The book was handwritten. Paper was rationed across the fleet, but Yara Okonkwo had bartered 3 days of water recycling shifts for a blank notebook and had copied, from memory, the 12 foundational fables of the Geminese literary tradition. The ink was improvised from engine lubricant thinned with filtered water. The letters were uneven, bleeding slightly into the cheap pulp. The daughter, Sailor, who was 5, did not care about the quality of the ink. She cared that her mother's hand was warm on her shoulder and that the story was about a fox who tricked a god. The fox said to Hermes, "Who is Hermes?" "The messenger. The one who carries words between the gods and the people." "Why can't the gods carry their own words?" Yara smiled. It was the kind of smile that costs something. The kind that parents produce when a child asks a question that deserves a better world than the one available. Because the gods are busy, love. Doing what? Yara looked past her daughter's head, through the viewport that ran along the transport's port side. Outside, the stars were fixed and foreign. They had been foreign for 23 days. The Federation's relief ships, 3 of them, small by colonial standards, impossibly clean, held station in a loose triangle around the fleet. Beyond them, nothing. No planet, no station, no ground. 23 days since they had been told they had found Earth. 23 days of holding position in empty space while the adults negotiated and the children asked questions that the adults could not answer. Doing what, Mama? Deciding, Yara said quietly. The gods are deciding. Sailor accepted this with the gravity of a 5-year-old who understood that adults used the word deciding the way soldiers used the word waiting, which was to say, something is wrong and no one will tell me what it is. They returned to the fox and the god. Around them, the Geminon Traveler hummed with the low, chronic vibration of systems running past their service life. The air smelled of too many people in too little space. A sharp, amniotic copper tang mixed with the sourness of unwashed bodies. Someone 3 rows back was coughing. the same dry, rasping cough that had been circulating through the transport's population for a week. The medical supplies were adequate now, supplemented by Federation aid packages that arrived on schedule and contained medicines that worked better than anything colonial pharmacology had produced. But the aid packages came with Federation medical officers who asked questions and took samples, and the crew had noticed that the questions were getting more specific and the samples more frequent. Nobody said the word screening on the passenger deck. The word moved through the fleet the way radiation moves through a hull, invisibly, inevitably, accumulating in the bones. Yara turned the page. The Fox had reached the gates of the underworld.
Mama, are we going to Earth?
Yes. Love. When? Yara's hand tightened on her daughter's shoulder. She did not have an answer. She had not had an answer for 23 days. She turned the page and kept reading. Part 2, Battlestar Galactica. CIC. Morning watch. Colonel Salty had not slept well in 40 years. He had not slept at all in 2 days. These were, by his personal accounting, separate problems. The CIC was running on standard watch rotation, a phrase that had lost its meaning 6 months ago, and now referred to whatever configuration of exhausted officers Ty could assemble from the Galactica's reduced complement. The plot table glowed its permanent sickly phosphor green, casting extreme chiaroscuro shadows across the hard angles of Ty's face. It showed the fleet in formation, 63 vessels, holding station, stationary. The 3 Federation ships Norway, Saratoga, Monitor, pulsed in cold blue at the formation's edge. The Pegasus held the outer flank. Everything was quiet. Everything had been quiet for 23 days. Ty hated quiet. The air in the CIC tasted of stale adrenaline and ozone. Status. Petty Officer Douala looked up from communications. Fleet status unchanged, Colonel. No contacts on Doradus. The Norway reports all clear on her sweep. The Monitor is conducting scheduled research transmissions to Earth. Fuel consumption is nominal across the fleet. Fuel consumption is nominal, Ty repeated. He made it sound like an insult. We are burning fuel to hold station in empty space. That is not nominal, Lieutenant. That is waste. Yes, sir. He crossed to the plot table. The formation was tight. Adama's standing order, maintained since arrival. No ship more than 1,200 meters from its neighbor. Close enough to coordinate, close enough to jump together if the order came. The problem was that the order could not come because they had no jump coordinates in this space, because their navigational database did not contain a single reference star within 50 light years, and because the Federation's navigational system operated on principles that Gaeta was still translating. They could not jump. They could not run. They could fight, technically. The Pegasus was still armed. The Galactica's conventional batteries still functioned, but the nukes were cold, and the Vipers were on maintenance rotation. And if a Cylon base star appeared on Dradus right now, the tactical calculus was simple and ugly. Ty pulled the fleet consumption report and began reading. Water recycling at 81% across the civilian fleet. Adequate, not comfortable. Food stores supplemented by Federation rations. Better than anything they'd had since the colonies, which rankled in ways Ty would never articulate. Medical supplies stable. Morale unmeasurable. The hatch opened. Lieutenant Gaeta entered with a data pad and the particular expression of a man who had been awake for as long as he had, and was less accustomed to it. Colonel, the civilian captain's daily report. Summarize. 7 ships are reporting maintenance concerns. The Astral Queen's port engine is running at 60%. Chief Led says he can hold it for another week, maybe 2, but she needs a yard. The Darumozu's water recycler failed overnight. The Norway dispatched a repair team. And Captain Renner of the Adriatic is requesting again to know when the fleet will be relocated to a permanent settlement. Tell Captain Renner that when I know, he will know. And until then, he can manage his ship and stop filing requests that waste my time. Yes, sir. Anything from the quorum? Gaeta hesitated. Vice President Baltar's office has submitted a formal inquiry to the President regarding the timeline for planetary settlement. The inquiry references the Articles of Colonization and the government's obligation to provide permanent habitation within a reasonable period following the identification of a viable world. It is phrased as a legal question. It reads as a political maneuver. Of course it does. Forward it to the President's office. She'll handle Baltar. Yes, sir. And one more item, Colonel. The navigation translation. Where are we? I've completed the baseline conversion of Federation stellar cartography into colonial coordinate format. The short version is, we are approximately 30 light-years from Earth, in a region the Federation classifies as the Arcanus sector, near the border of Klingon-claimed space. The long version is that border does not mean what it means in colonial territory. The Klingon border is a negotiated abstraction maintained by treaty and enforced by patrol, We are inside the treaty zone. Our presence here is technically a provocation. We're a provocation. The fleet's presence in this sector could be interpreted by the Klingon Empire as a Federation military buildup. Yes, sir. I stared at the plot table. 63 ships. 50,000 souls. A provocation. Get out, Gator. Yes, sir. Ty stood alone at the plot table and looked at the formation. He thought about the drink he was not going to pour. He thought about the Cylons who were somewhere in this fleet, wearing human faces and waiting. He thought about the fact that 23 days ago they had been told they found the Promised Land, and the Promised Land had told them to wait. He went back to the consumption report. Part 3. Battlestar Pegasus, Commander's Quarters. Commander Lee Adama had spent the morning running scenarios on a tactical display that was not designed for the exercise he was asking it to perform. The display showed the fleet in formation. Around it, Lee had plotted approach vectors, 12 of them, representing the most likely FTL jump points a Cylon strike force would use based on colonial navigational logic. He had then overlaid the engagement envelopes of the 3 Federation ships, the Pegasus's own weapons systems, and the Galactica's reduced capability. The result was a coverage map with gaps wide enough to fly a Battlestar through. He stood back. He had run this exercise every day for a week. The math did not improve. The Federation ships were powerful. Their energy weapons operated at ranges and intensities that made colonial ordnance look primitive. But there were 3 of them. 3 ships could not establish a defensive perimeter around 63 vessels spread across 1,200 meters of formation depth. The Pegasus could cover one flank. The Galactica could cover another if she brought her conventional guns to bear. That left 2 approach vectors and the entire ventral arc undefended. If the Cylons came in force, 3 Baystars, which was their standard strike package, the engagement would last approximately 11 minutes. The Federation ships would destroy significant Cylon assets. The Pegasus would acquit herself. The Galactica would fight, and the civilian fleet, packed together in the center of the formation like livestock in a pen, would die. Lee closed the display. He sat at his desk and pulled the communications log. 3 messages from civilian captains requesting information about relocation. 2 messages from his CAG requesting authorization to increase Viper patrols. Lee had authorized them without consulting the Norway, because the Pegasus was still a colonial warship, and he did not require Federation permission to fly his own aircraft. 1 message from his father's office, routine, confirming the day's fleet coordination schedule. He opened a new message. He addressed it to the Galactica, eyes only for the Admiral. He wrote 3 paragraphs laying out the tactical deficit. He did not editorialize, he did not recommend. He presented the math. His father would understand the math. His father would also understand what Lee was not saying, which was, we need to move. And every day we don't move is a day we're gambling the fleet's survival on the Cylons' inaction. He sent it. He sat for a moment in the silence of quarters that had belonged to 3 commanders before him. He had never redecorated. The room still carried the austere, aggressive geometry of its original design. Everything functional, nothing personal. The desk positioned to face the door like a fortification of cold steel. Lee had kept it that way because changing it felt like an admission that the Pegasus was his, and some part of him was still waiting to give her back to someone who deserved her. He stood, straightened his uniform, and went to the CIC to relieve his XO. Part 4. Battlestar Galactica. Hangar deck. Chief Petty Officer Galen Tyrell was underneath Viper 4027 when Starbuck's boots hit the deck plate 6 inches from his head. Chief, Captain Thrace. I'm busy.
You're always busy. That's why I come to you instead of waiting for an appointment.
Tyrell slid out from beneath the Viper on the maintenance creeper, wiping his hands on a rag that had been cleaned 3 days ago and had since absorbed the accumulated grease of a warbird fleet running on borrowed time. He stood. Starbuck was in her flight suit, helmet tucked under one arm, the particular energy of a pilot who had just landed radiating off her like kinetic heat. The hangar deck reeked of aviation fuel, scorched carbon, and oxidized metal. The old blood of tired machines. What's wrong with your bird? Nothing's wrong with my bird. My bird is fine. My bird is the only thing in this fleet that's fine. She set the helmet on the wing strut. I just came off the southern sweep. 3 hours, Chief. 3 hours of flying in circles around a fleet that isn't moving, in space we don't know, looking for contacts that aren't there, while 3 Federation ships sit on the perimeter doing the same thing with better sensors and a smug attitude about it. The Norway's crew has been professional, Captain. I didn't say they weren't professional. I said they were smug. There's a difference. Professional means they do their jobs. Smug means they do their jobs while silently noting that our Vipers are museum pieces compared to whatever they keep in their shuttle bays. Tyrell did not argue with this assessment. He had toured the Norway's engineering section at Captain Patel's invitation the previous week. The experience had been instructive and quietly devastating. The Federation built their ships with materials his engineering manuals didn't have names for. Their power systems operated on principles that Gator was still translating. Their maintenance protocols assumed a level of supply chain access that the colonial fleet had not enjoyed since before the fall. He had returned to the Galactica's hangar deck, looked at the row of Vipers held together with field repairs and improvised parts, and spent 30 minutes sitting on an ammunition crate in silence. "Captain, what do you need?" Starbuck leaned against the Viper's fuselage. The casual posture was deceptive. Tyrol had worked with Kara Thrace long enough to recognize the difference between her at rest and her coiling for something. "I need you to tell me how long you can keep the air wing operational without a proper maintenance yard. Define operational, flight ready, combat capable, able to launch a full cap and a strike package if something jumps in." Tyrol considered the question the way he considered all questions about his deck, honestly, precisely, and with the bone-deep weariness of a man who had been performing miracles with inadequate tools for a year, and who knew, with the certainty of an engineer, that miracles have a shelf life. Full CAP rotation, indefinitely. The birds can fly. The routine maintenance is sustainable with current parts inventory, supplemented by what the Federation has provided. And I'll give them credit. Their fabrication capability is extraordinary. I can replicate any mechanical component we need using their manufacturing systems. But combat capable is a different question. The Mark 6 are holding. The Mark 6 are showing metal fatigue in the wing roots that I've been patching with composite overlays. If we launch a full strike package and sustain combat maneuvering for more than 20 minutes, I will lose airframes, not to enemy fire, to structural failure. Starbuck's jaw tightened. How many? 3, maybe 4. Out of the 40 Mark IIIs were still flying off Galactica's deck. That's 10%, Chief. Yes, Captain. It is. Starbuck pushed off the fuselage. She paced the width of the maintenance bay. 4 steps out, 4 steps back. The restless circuit of a woman whose entire professional identity was built on the ability to act, and who had been denied action for 23 days. Chief, we can't stay here. That's above my pay grade, Captain. Everything is above everyone's pay grade right now. That's the problem. The Admiral is waiting for the Federation. The Federation is waiting for the Klingons. The Klingons are waiting for whoever it is Klingons wait for. And we're sitting in the middle of it with a disarmed fleet and metal fatigue in our wing roots. She stopped pacing. I ran the Northern Arc on my sweep. There's nothing out there, Chief. Nothing on Dradis, nothing on Passive, nothing on the Federation's sensor net. That doesn't mean nothing is coming. It means we can't see it yet. Tyrol folded the rag and set it on the tool cart. What are you going to do, Captain? I'm going to talk to the old man. About the wing roots? About everything. The wing routes, the sweep patterns, the fact that we're burning flight hours on patrols that accomplish nothing while our birds are degrading. I want to propose a modified cap. Shorter rotations, higher frequency, focused on the approach vectors Lee identified instead of full perimeter sweeps. It conserves airframe life and puts our birds where they'd actually matter if something jumps in. Tyrol nodded slowly. It was a good proposal. It was also the kind of proposal that would require the Admiral to acknowledge, formally, that the current defensive posture was inadequate. Starbuck was not just suggesting a tactical adjustment. She was forcing a conversation the command staff had been avoiding. Captain, you know what happens when you walk into the Admiral's office with a proposal that implies his current orders aren't working. Starbuck smiled. It was the smile that had preceded every reckless, brilliant, borderline, insubordinate decision of her career. Yeah, Chief, I know exactly what happens. She picked up her helmet and walked off the deck. Tyrol watched her go. He then crouched back down beside Viper 4027, picked up his wrench, and went back to work on a landing strut that was 300 flight hours past its rated service life and was going to hold because Galen Tyrol told it to hold. Part 5. Civilian Transport Kimber Hooter, Cargo Bay 3. Captain Carl Agathon did not enjoy this work. He stood in the cavernous, rust-flaked cargo bay of the Kimber Hooter, a mid-fleet freighter that had been hauling Tilium ore before the fall and now hauled people, and watched his screening team process the ship's crew one at a time. The process was methodical. Each crew member entered the bay, sat in a metal chair beneath a single, harsh, portable examination light, answered a series of questions, submitted to a blood draw, and waited while Sergeant Matthias ran the sample through a modified scanner the Federation's science vessel had provided 2 weeks ago. The single cone of white light cast heavy, ink-black shadows into the corners of the bay. The air smelled of old dust and new fear. The scanner was imperfect. Dr. Zhao, aboard the monitor, had been honest about its limitations. It could detect certain protein markers that appeared in Cylon biological tissue, markers identified from the prisoner now aboard the Enterprise. But the detection threshold was inconsistent. False negatives were possible, false positives were likely. The scanner was a first-generation tool built from incomplete data, and Zhao had cautioned Hilo against treating a clean result as proof of anything. Halo treated clean results as permission to move to the next name on the list. He did not treat them as proof. Proof was a luxury he had stopped believing in on Caprica. The current subject was a middle-aged man named Demetrius Hallis, listed as a cargo handler, 12 years of service before the fall. He sat in the chair with the rigid calm of a man who understood why this was happening and resented it without complaint. His blood went into the scanner. The scanner processed. Matthias watched. Clean, sir. Thank you, Mr. Hallis. You can return to your duties. Hallis stood. He did not thank Halo. He did not look at him. He walked out of the cargo bay and back into the corridor, and Halo heard him say something to the next person in line. Something quiet, something bitter, before the next person entered. Halo marked a clipboard. Ship 14 of 63. 412 individuals screened. No positives. No confirmation of anything except that 412 people now associated Halo's face with the experience of being suspected. Sergeant Matthias stepped closer. Sir, we're averaging 31 per ship. At this rate, the full fleet screening will take another 11 days. I know, Sergeant. Sir, the crew of the Darumozu is refusing screening. Their captain says they'll comply when the Admiral issues a direct order with his signature and seal. They're calling it a loyalty test and they don't appreciate it. Hilo closed his eyes. He opened them. Get me a channel to the Galactica. I need Colonel T. Sir, Colonel Tighe told the last 3 captains who refused screening to comply or be boarded. I know what Colonel Tighe told them, Sergeant. I am not Colonel Tighe. Get me the channel. I'll talk to the captain myself. Matthias moved off. Halo stood alone in the cargo bay, the examination light casting a hard white circle on the empty chair. He thought about Sharon. He thought about Hera, their daughter, asleep in their quarters aboard the Galactica, 2 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubbornness and a biology that existed nowhere else in the known universe. Half human, half Cylon, the only child ever born of both, and the living proof that the line between the two was not as absolute as either side needed it to be. The Federation knew about Hera. Dr. Zhao had requested access to her medical records within 48 hours of the Monitor's arrival. Halo had refused. Adama had backed him. Roslin had backed Adama. The refusal had been diplomatic. The child is a minor under colonial law. Her medical records require parental consent and presidential authorization. The request is noted and will be considered through proper channels. But the message had been simple. She is ours, and you cannot have her. Zhao had not pressed. He had, however, continued to request. The requests arrived weekly, each one slightly more specific than the last, each one couched in the language of scientific curiosity and framed as an extension of the detection research. Helo read them, filed them, and did not respond. He knew what Hera was. He knew what she meant. He knew that the child sleeping in his quarters was, to a Vulcan science officer with unlimited research resources, the most significant biological specimen in the quadrant. He knew that if the Federation ever gained access to Hera's full medical profile, the detection methodology would advance by months overnight. He knew that this was, in purely strategic terms, the correct thing to do. He also knew that she was his daughter, and that no strategic calculation in the universe was going to put her in a laboratory. The next crew member entered. A young woman. She sat in the chair. She looked at Hilo. Is this going to hurt? No, Hilo said. It's just a blood draw. That's not what I meant. Hilo looked at her for a long moment. She was perhaps 20. She had survived the end of her civilization. She was sitting in a metal chair in a cargo bay being tested for the possibility that she was not human. No, he said again, quieter. It's not going to hurt. He picked up the needle and got back to work. Part 6, Colonial 1. Presidential Office. The office aboard Colonial 1 was small, cluttered, and smelled permanently of recycled air, oxidized metal, and the particular brand of stale tea Laura Roslin had been drinking since the colonies burned. The desk was a repurposed galley table. The presidential seal, hand-painted on a square of raw hull plating by a Caprican art student who had survived the fall, hung on the bulkhead behind her chair. 3 stacks of paper occupied the desk's surface: fleet status reports, civilian petitions, and the growing pile of diplomatic correspondence with the Federation that Roslin had taken to reading with the grim thoroughness of a woman looking for the lie in every paragraph. A 4th item sat apart from the stacks. Bolter's formal inquiry, the one T had forwarded without comment. Roslin had read it twice. It was, as Gaeta had observed, phrased as a legal question and designed as a political maneuver. Bolter was citing the Articles of Colonization, the foundational legal framework of the colonial government, to argue that the executive branch had a statutory obligation to secure permanent habitation within a reasonable period of identifying a viable world. Earth had been identified. 23 days had passed. The word reasonable was doing all of the heavy lifting in the document, and Bolter had chosen it with the precise lethal care of a man who understood that legal language was a weapon. Roslin set the inquiry aside. She would respond. She would respond through the proper channels, with the proper legal arguments, and she would bury Baltar's maneuver under the weight of executive prerogative and wartime authority. But the fact that he had filed it at all meant the political ground was shifting beneath her. Baltar smelled weakness the way certain animals smell blood, not with malice, necessarily, but with an instinct that could not be suppressed and that was in its way more dangerous than deliberate opposition. She turned to the matter at hand. Captain Anwar Patel sat across from her in the only other chair. He had arrived aboard Colonial 1 15 minutes ago, escorted by 2 of Rosalind's security detail, who had searched him with the methodical courtesy of people who had learned through experience that courtesy and thoroughness were not mutually exclusive. Patel was, by Rosalind's assessment, a competent man. His record was solid. His bearing was calm. His ship was well run. He was not James Kirk. Captain Patel, I appreciate your willingness to meet with me aboard Colonial 1. Madam President, the courtesy is mine. I will be direct, Captain, because I have learned that Federation officers respond well to directness, and because I do not have time to be otherwise. Patel inclined his head. He had been warned about Rosalind. He had been warned by Kirk personally in the handoff briefing, and the warning had been, she is smarter than you expect, she is more desperate than she shows, and she is right about almost everything. Listen to her. My fleet has been holding station in this position for 23 days. In that time, we have received humanitarian aid, medical support, and the beginning of a screening program for Cylon infiltrators. We are grateful. I am not being diplomatic when I say that. We are genuinely grateful. Your Federation's generosity has kept people alive who would otherwise be dead. Thank you, Madam President. I'm now going to tell you why gratitude is not enough. Rosalind set her hands flat on the desk. Captain, my people are sitting in contested space, in a fixed formation, with their weapons powered down, 30 light years from the planet they were promised. Every day we remain here is a day the Cylons can find us. Every day we remain here is a day my people lose faith that Earth is anything other than another false hope in a year of false hopes. I have children on those ships, Captain. I have families who were told 23 days ago that they had found home. They are looking out their windows at empty space, and they are starting to wonder if they were lied to. Patel did not flinch. He had expected this conversation. He had prepared for it. Preparation did not make it easier, Madam President. I understand the urgency. I share it. But the situation is more complicated than it appears from inside the fleet. Then uncomplicated for me, Captain. Patel chose his words. The space we are currently occupying is designated as a border zone under the terms of the Organian Peace Treaty between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. That treaty governs the disposition of military assets in this region. Your fleet, 63 vessels, including 2 warships of significant tonnage, registers on Klingon sensor arrays as a substantial military presence. We are refugees, Captain, not a military presence. I understand that, Madam President. The Klingon Empire does not. The Klingon Empire sees hulls and tonnage and formation discipline. If we move your fleet deeper into Federation space, that movement will be tracked by every Klingon listening post along the border. It will be interpreted as a Federation-directed relocation of military assets into our interior. At this moment, right now, today, the Federation is attempting to open peace negotiations with the Klingon Chancellor. The Enterprise is preparing to depart Earth to escort the Chancellor's vessel to a neutral site. If the Klingons detect a fleet of unknown warships transiting toward the Federation interior during the same window that their Chancellor is departing for negotiations, the peace process collapses. General Chang, the leader of the Klingon War Party, will use the movement as proof that the Federation is arming for war under cover of diplomacy. Rosalind was quiet for a moment. Captain Patel, you are telling me that my people cannot go home because a Klingon general might misinterpret a refugee convoy as a military operation. I am telling you that the timing is catastrophic, Madam President. If the negotiations succeed, if the Enterprise brings the Chancellor to the table, and a ceasefire holds, the political environment changes entirely. We can relocate the fleet under diplomatic cover. We can assign a settlement world. We can begin the process of integration. But if we move now, before the negotiations have produced a framework, we risk destroying the very process that makes your fleet's future possible. And if the Cylons arrive before your negotiations conclude? Patel held her gaze. Then the Norway, the Saratoga, and the Monitor will defend this fleet with everything we have, Madam President. And I will call for reinforcements. 3 ships, Captain. 3 ships with weapon systems your fleet has not seen in operation, Madam President. We are not defenseless. No, you are not. But you are also not enough. The silence stretched. Rosalind picked up her tea. She did not drink it. She held it in both hands, the warmth seeping through the ceramic. Captain Patel, I have an asset aboard the Galactica that your science vessel has been requesting access to for 2 weeks. Patel's expression did not change, but his attention sharpened. A child, 2 years old, born to a human father and a Cylon mother, the only known hybrid of the two species. Your Dr. Zhao has submitted weekly requests for access to her medical records. I have declined those requests. I will continue to decline them. Madam President, I am not finished. The child's biology contains, by every analysis your own science officer has speculated upon, the key to a comprehensive Cylon detection methodology. Access to her medical profile would accelerate your research significantly. I am aware of this. I have been aware of this since the day your monitor arrived. She set the tea down. I am telling you this so that you understand what I am holding, Captain. And I am telling you so that you understand that I am holding it not as leverage, but as a mother holds a child. Because the child is not a tool, and the moment she becomes one, we have lost something that the Federation science cannot replace. I will not bargain with her, but I will remember that your government has left my people in contested space for 23 days while requesting access to a 2-year-old's blood work. That is not a negotiating position, Captain. It is a moral observation. Patel was quiet for longer than he intended. Madam President, I understand. I will communicate the full scope of your concerns to Starfleet Command. I would appreciate that. And Captain, I would like an honest answer to one question. Yes, Madam President, if you were me, if these were your people, your ships, your children looking out the windows, would you stay? Patel was quiet again. Madam President, if I were you, I would be asking exactly the questions you are asking. I would be furious that the answers are what they are, and I would stay, because the alternative is worse. Rosalind set the cup down. Thank you for the honesty, Captain. I do not accept your answer, but I appreciate that it was honest. Madam President, you are dismissed, Captain. I will expect a daily briefing on the progress of the negotiations, the status of your reinforcement capacity, and any change at all in the threat assessment. If the Klingon situation shifts, I want to know before the Klingons do. Understood. Patel stood. He paused at the hatch. Madam President, Captain Kirk asked me to tell you something before he left. Rosalind looked up. He said, "Tell her I haven't forgotten. Tell her I'm working on it." Rosalind's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes shifted, a small private adjustment that Patel recognized as the face of a woman who had been holding her breath for 23 days and had just been reminded that someone, somewhere, was still fighting for her people. Thank you, Captain. That will be all. Patel left. The hatch sealed. Rosalind sat alone in the small, cluttered office of a presidency that governed nothing but the space inside 63 aging ships. She looked at the hand-painted seal on the bulkhead. She looked at Baltar's inquiry, sitting apart from the stacks like a small patient bomb. She picked up the next petition and began reading. Part 7. Battlestar Galactica, Admiral's Quarters. The quarters were spare. A rack, a desk, a shelf of books, real books, bound in leather, brought aboard the Galactica 20 years ago when Adama had assumed his first command posting on the old ship. A model of the original Galactica, pre-refit, sat on the shelf beside the books. The room smelled of pipe tobacco and the slow decay of the ship's infrastructure. Adama sat at the desk. Lee's tactical assessment was open on the screen in front of him. He had read it twice. The math was clean. The conclusion was implicit. Lee had not written "we need to move." Lee had not needed to. 3 approach vectors undefended. 11-minute engagement window against a standard Cylon strike package. Civilian fleet survival probability under sustained assault, low. The word low did not appear in Lee's report. The numbers said it for him. Adama closed the report. He stood and crossed to the shelf. He picked up the model of the old Galactica, the one from before the Cylon War, before the retrofits, before the armor plating and the gun batteries and the landing pods. The original design had been elegant, clean lines, a ship built to explore, not to fight. The Galactica had been converted to a warship because the Cylons had made exploration a luxury the colonies could not afford. He set the model down. The decision was not complicated. The decision was, in fact, brutally simple. He could order the fleet to jump, blind, without coordinates, into unknown space, and hope that distance from the Cylons compensated for distance from the Federation. Or he could hold position, accept the tactical risk, and trust that the Federation's diplomatic process would produce a result before the risk materialized. The first option was instinct. 40 years of colonial military doctrine. If you are vulnerable, move. If you cannot fight, run. If you cannot run, die on your feet. Adama had lived by that doctrine since the Academy. He had commanded by it since the fall. Every jump, every evasion, every desperate lunge through hostile space had been an expression of the same foundational principle. Survival belongs to the fleet that moves. The second option was something he had no training for. It was patience. It was trust in an institution he did not control, operated by people he had known for less than a month, in service of a diplomatic outcome he could not influence. It was the conscious, deliberate choice to remain vulnerable because the alternative, flight, would destroy the one thing more valuable than safety. Hope. He had told Kirk in the wardroom of this ship that he was out of warm calculations. That had been true. It remained true. But the cold calculation was the same one Rosalind had made on the first day when she had told Kirk the truth about the Cylons instead of hiding it. We have one chance to be welcome here, and I will not spend it on a mistake of fear. The hatch chimed. Adama called permission to enter. Starbuck stepped inside. She was still in her flight suit, her helmet under her arm, the particular energy of a woman who had been thinking about this conversation for the entire walk from the hangar deck. Admiral, Captain Thrace, permission to speak freely, sir? Kara. When have you ever waited for permission? She almost smiled. Sir, I've been running the cap rotations for 3 weeks. I have a proposal for a modified pattern that addresses the tactical gaps Commander Adama identified in his assessment. Adama looked at her. She was standing at attention. Unusual for Starbuck, who treated military formality as a suggestion rather than a requirement. The attention posture meant she was serious. It meant she had thought about this. It meant she was not here to complain, but to offer a solution. Go ahead. She laid it out. Shorter rotations, higher frequency, concentrated coverage on the approach vectors Lee had flagged rather than full perimeter sweeps, conservation of airframe life on the Mark I size, coordination with the Federation ship sensor coverage to fill gaps rather than duplicate them. It was sound. It was tactically sharp. It was also, Adama recognized, a framework that acknowledged the fleet's defensive posture was insufficient without saying so directly. Captain, this proposal assumes we are staying. Starbuck met his eyes. Yes, sir. It does. You think we should move? Sir, with respect, every instinct I have says we should have moved 2 weeks ago. We are sitting in a static position with known enemies who can jump into this sector whenever they decide to. We have no exit coordinates. Our nukes are cold. The Federation's defensive perimeter is too thin. I know the political situation. I know why we're here. I understand the calculation. I am telling you that the calculation is correct and I hate it. Adama studied the woman standing in his quarters. He had known Kara Thrace since she was a flight instructor at the academy. Reckless, brilliant, impossible to manage, and the best combat pilot the colonial fleet had produced in a generation. She had survived the fall, survived New Caprica, survived things that would have broken anyone with less sheer stubborn will. She was not a political thinker. She was not a diplomat. She was a pilot who understood, in the bone-deep way that pilots understand things, that sitting still in hostile space was an invitation to die. And she was right. And it did not change anything. Kara, I am going to approve your modified cap rotation. Coordinate with Lee and with Captain Patel. Keep the Federation ships in the loop. Do not exceed the patrol boundaries Patel has established without my authorization. Yes, sir. And Kara, sir, the calculation you hate is the same calculation I hate. We are staying because the alternative is worse. I need you to fly, and I need you to be ready, and I need you to trust me when I tell you that staying is not the same as giving up. Starbuck's jaw worked. She was, Adama could see, fighting the urge to argue. Fighting it and winning, not because she agreed, but because she trusted the man behind the desk in a way that she could not fully explain and would never admit to publicly. Yes, sir. Dismissed, Captain. She left. Adama sat back down. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, real paper, from the dwindling supply he kept for communications that mattered, and began to write. The letter was to the fleet. Not a formal order, not a presidential address. A letter from the Admiral to the captains, the crew, the civilians, the families. He had never written one before. He had given speeches, he had issued orders, he had stood on the hangar deck and spoken to crowds, but he had never sat at his desk and written a letter to the people who were waiting for him to tell them what came next. He wrote slowly. He did not lie. He told them the fleet was holding position because the Federation was engaged in a diplomatic process that would determine whether the colonies had a future. He told them the process would take time. He told them the tactical situation was being managed. He told them the screening program was necessary and that he understood its cost. He told them that Earth was real, that it was close, and that the path to it led through patience rather than speed. He paused at the last paragraph. He wrote, I have asked you to trust me before. On the day the colonies fell, on the day we left Ragnar, on the day we found New Caprica, and on the day we left it, I am asking you to trust me again. I know the cost of that request. I know that trust spent too many times becomes debt rather than currency. I am asking anyway, because the alternative is to run, and I do not believe we have anywhere left to run to. I believe we have arrived. I believe the place we have arrived is worth the price of patience. I am asking you to believe it with me. He set the pen down. He read the letter once. He folded it, placed it in the internal courier pouch, and marked it for fleet-wide distribution through the civilian captain's network. And he sat in the silence of his quarters and waited for the consequences. Part 8, Battlestar Galactica, Wardroom, evening. The wardroom was lit by 3 of its 4 sconces. The 4th had burned out a week ago, and the replacement bulb was on back order from a supply chain that no longer existed. The single dead bulb cast extreme chiaroscuro lighting across the space, leaving the port side drowning in ink-heavy shadows. Rosalind entered first. She sat in her usual chair, set a folder on the table, and waited. Adama entered a minute later. He poured 2 cups of coffee from the carafe tea kept perpetually brewing on the sideboard, a small act of domestic maintenance that tea performed without acknowledgement, and that kept the wardroom functional during the 18-hour days the command staff had been working since arrival. Adama sat. He set 1 cup in front of Rosalind. She accepted it without comment. "I spoke with Patel," she said. "I read Lee's tactical assessment, and I spoke with Starbuck. Then we are having the same conversation from 3 directions. We are." Rosalind opened her folder. Patel's position is that the fleet cannot move until the Klingon negotiations produce a framework. The negotiations have not begun. The Enterprise has not yet departed Earth. The timeline is at minimum another 2 to 3 weeks. During that window, we remain in contested space with inadequate defense and no exit coordinates. Yes, Bill. 2 to 3 weeks is unacceptable. It is what we have, Laura. It is what the Federation has offered. It is not what I have accepted. Adama drank his coffee. It was bad. All of the coffee aboard the Galactica was bad. It had been bad since the fall, and the Federation's food supplies had not included coffee because the Federation drank something produced by a machine that reassembled matter at the molecular level, and Adama had tried it once and determined that whatever it produced was not coffee. Laura, what are you proposing? I am proposing that we give the Federation a deadline, not an ultimatum. I'm not foolish enough to threaten the only ally we have. A deadline. A date by which the fleet must be relocated or we begin relocating ourselves. We frame it as a safety concern, which it is. We frame it as a humanitarian crisis, which it is becoming. We give them the respect of advance notice, and we give ourselves the dignity of agency. Adama considered this. How long? 14 days. If the negotiations have not produced a framework in 14 days, we begin a staged relocation deeper into Federation space. We coordinate with Patel. We move slowly. We make it look like a safety withdrawal rather than a political statement. The Klingons will see it regardless. The Klingons will see 63 civilian ships moving away from their border. If General Chang interprets a refugee convoy retreating from danger as a military buildup, then General Chang is looking for an excuse and he will find one whether we move or not. Adama looked at her. She was right. She was also, he knew, operating from a position that was not purely strategic. She was operating from the position of a president whose people had been promised a home and were instead being told to wait in the dark. The political pressure inside the fleet was building. The petitions, the civilian captains, the screening operation eroding trust faster than it was producing results, Altar's legal inquiry probing for weakness, the Quorum's patience fraying. Rosalind could feel the fleet's cohesion thinning, and she was responding to it the way a leader responds, by converting pressure into action before the pressure converted itself into something worse. Laura, if we move and the negotiations fail because we moved, we will not get a second chance. Bill, if we stay and the silence find us, there won't be anyone left to negotiate for. The silence sat between them like a third person. I am not overruling you, Rosalind said, quieter. I am asking you to give me a contingency. A plan we can execute in 14 days if the Federation has not acted. Something that gives me an answer for the captains who are filing petitions, for the Quorum delegates who are asking questions I cannot answer, and for the families who are asking their children to be patient in a language patience was never designed for. Adama set his cup down. He looked at the woman across the table, the school teacher who had become a president, the politician who had become a war leader, the survivor who had refused every invitation to despair. She was thinner than she had been at the colonies. Her eyes were harder. Her hands, resting on the table, were steady in a way that came from practice rather than calm. 14 days, he said. I will have Guy to prepare jump coordinates using the Federation's cartographic data. If we move together as a fleet, no ship left behind. I will coordinate with Patel on a relocation corridor that minimizes the Klingon sensor footprint. And I will have Starbuck's modified cap rotation operational within 48 hours to cover us in the meantime. And if Patel objects, then Patel can file his objections with Starfleet Command. We are a sovereign fleet, Laura. We have accepted their protection. We have not accepted their authority. Rosalind closed a folder. Something in her shoulders released. Not all of the tension, but enough to suggest that the conversation had produced what she needed. Not a solution, but a shape. A frame around the uncertainty. Thank you, Bill. Don't thank me yet. If this goes wrong, we lose the Federation. If this goes right, we gain Earth. Adama looked at her for a long moment. Yes, he said, we do. Part 9. USS Enterprise A. Earth orbit. 72 hours later. The Enterprise A hung in standard orbit above Earth, her hull catching the Pacific sunlight in long, pale streaks across the dorsal nacelle pylons. She was a Constitution-class refit, one of 14 in active service, distinguishable from her sister ships only by her registry number and by the history attached to it. That history was at this moment standing in the transporter room. Kirk stepped onto the pad. Scotty was at the console. McCoy stood by the door with the expression of a man attending a funeral he had not been invited to. Scotty. Aye, Captain. All systems nominal. The ship is ready, sir. She's been ready since yesterday, but I wanted to run the intermix ratios one more time. A pause. I ran them 4 times. And she's ready, Captain. Kirk adjusted his tunic. The uniform was fresh. The boots were polished. Bones. McCoy looked at him. Jim, I have said everything I intend to say about this mission. I said it in the briefing room. I said it in the corridor. I said it to Spock, who did not listen. I said it to Uhura, who agreed with me and who is coming anyway. I have nothing left to say. Good. Then come aboard and say nothing. McCoy almost smiled. Damn you, Jim. They beamed up. The bridge was waiting, clean, sterile, free from the scent of oxidized metal and desperation that saturated the colonial fleet. Sulu at the helm, Chekhov at navigation, Uhura at communications, Spock at the science station, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, the blue glow of the scanner hood casting familiar shadows across his face. Kirk walked to the center seat. He did not sit immediately. He stood beside it, one hand resting on the armrest, and looked at the view screen. Earth filled the frame, blue and white and green, impossibly vivid against the absolute black. He had left this planet 100 times. He had returned to it 100 times. Each departure carried a particular weight, and the weight varied with the mission. This departure was heavier than most. Mr. Sulu, clear all moorings. Signal space dock for departure clearance. Aye, Captain. Moorings clear. Space dock signals departure at our discretion. Mr. Chekhov, course for the Klingon neutral zone. Rendezvous coordinates as specified in the mission dossier. Course plotted and laid in, Captain. Kirk sat down. The leather was worn under his grip. The bridge hummed around him, the deep subsonic vibration of a fully powered machine that wasn't bleeding out, waiting for the word. He could feel it in his chest, the way he had always felt it, since the first time he had sat in this chair, and realized that the ship was not merely a vehicle, but an extension of the will of the person who commanded her. In the guest quarters 3 decks below, Ambassador Sarek was reviewing his negotiation briefs. Talora was meditating. The diplomatic aides were organizing the formal protocols for the reception of a Klingon head of state aboard a Federation vessel. In the medical bay, the prisoner was sedated under standard restraint. Dr. Mbenga's research notes were filed and current. McCoy would resume oversight within the hour. She was, at this moment, the most valuable person aboard the Enterprise, and she was unconscious. Kirk looked at the view screen one last time. Mr. Sulu, take us out. Aye, Captain. The Enterprise A turned away from Earth, aligned with the stars, and accelerated to warp. The mission was underway. End of Chapter 6.